Grace Bennett screamed my name like the house itself had split open. The horn came next. One long, ragged blast from somewhere below the estate, deep enough to shake the stones beneath my feet. Anna's arms tightened around my neck. Her little body was trembling so hard her teeth clicked beside my ear. I held her closer without thinking. My hand pressed to the back of her head, trying to cover her from the smoke, the shouting, the awful iron smell of blood in the courtyard. Across the torn lawn, Ethan stood over Malcolm Reeves. No, not Ethan. The wolf. Massive, black-furred, shoulders rising and falling with every rough breath. Moonlight slid over his bloodied back and the curve of his bared teeth. Malcolm was pinned beneath one of his paws, his face smeared with dirt and blood. But somehow he was still smiling. Then Grace screamed again. "Alma!" My stomach dropped. "The children," I whispered. Ethan's head snapped toward me. For one terrible second, everything froze. The wind, the burning torches, the wolves fighting near the broken wall. Anna's shaking breaths against my skin. The wolf looked at me, and I saw Ethan inside those golden eyes. Not the alpha. Not the weapon everyone needed him to be. Ethan. I did not have to explain. He heard Grace. He understood. Malcolm coughed out a laugh from the mud. "Go on then, Woods. Run back to your little human." A growl rolled out of Ethan, low and murderous. I took one step toward the house. "Ethan." His gaze cut to me again. I held his stare, though every instinct in me wanted to run straight into the cellar and not look back. The children need you more than he does. For a heartbeat, I thought he would tear Malcolm apart anyway. Then the wolf lifted his paw. Malcolm sucked in a wet breath and rolled to his side, but I had already turned. Anna clung to me as I ran for the rear entrance, my shoes slipping over trampled grass and broken stone. Somewhere behind me, Ethan moved, a dark shape flashing past the corner of my eye with impossible speed. The kitchen door hung crooked on one hinge. Inside, the warm, familiar heart of the estate had turned into a battlefield. A sack of flour had split across the floor. White powder streaked through with muddy boot prints. One of Grace's copper pots rocked on its side, ringing softly each time it struck the flagstones. Smoke curled through the air from a toppled lamp, making my eyes sting. "Miss Alma," Anna whimpered. "I've got you," I said, though my voice came out rough. "Keep your face against me, baby. Don't look unless I tell you." The cellar stairs were open. Cold air breathed up from below. So did the smell of damp earth. And blood. I gripped the railing with one hand and hurried down, each step taking me deeper into the dark belly of the house. The children were crying before I saw them. Little sobs, hiccuping breaths. Someone was praying. Someone else kept saying, "Please, please, please," in a tiny voice that nearly broke me in half. At the bottom of the stairs, Grace stood between the children and a man twice her size. Her gray hair had come loose from its pins. Blood ran down her left arm and dripped from her fingertips onto the stone floor. In her right hand, she held a kitchen knife. Not one of the little peeling knives she used for apples. A butcher knife. She held it like she meant to use it. Behind her, children huddled between crates of potatoes and shelves of canned peaches. Sophie was on the far side of the cellar, trying to push the smallest ones behind a stack of old trunks. Her face was streaked with soot, but her eyes were sharp and furious. Near the back wall, boards had been ripped away from what I had always thought was just storage. There was a tunnel behind it, a narrow, black mouth leading under the estate. The Iron Claw fighter took one step toward Grace. "Move, old woman." Grace spat blood onto the floor. "I have burned biscuits scarier than you." Under any other circumstances, I might have laughed. Instead, I set Anna down behind me and reached for the first thing my hand found on the cellar shelf, a glass jar of pickled green beans. "Anna," I said quietly, "go to Sophie. Now." Her fingers dug into my skirt. I crouched just enough to look at her. "Eyes on me." She lifted her tear-soaked face. "You are brave," I told her. But brave girls listen. Go. She ran. The man turned his head at the movement. I threw the jar with everything I had. It hit him square in the temple and shattered. Vinegar, glass, and green beans exploded across his face. He roared and staggered sideways. Grace lunged. She did not hesitate. Not even for a breath. The knife flashed, but he caught her wrist and shoved her so hard she slammed into the shelves. Jars burst around her, peaches spilling over the floor like pieces of sunset. "Grace!" I shouted. The fighter turned on me, blood and vinegar running down one side of his face. His eyes were not human. They burned yellow in the dim cellar light. "Well," he snarled, "there she is." Every child behind me went silent. The way he looked at me made my skin crawl. Not like a man looking at a woman. Like a hunter who had just found the thing he had been sent to kill. I stepped back, slowly, keeping my body between him and the children. "If Malcolm sent you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "tell him he picked the wrong damn cellar." His mouth twisted. Then the darkness behind him moved. Ethan hit him like a storm. The impact threw both bodies into the far wall. The stone cracked. The shelves shook. Children screamed, and I spun toward them with both hands raised. "Stay down!" I shouted. "Hands on the shoulders in front of you," like fire drill practice. Little ones in the middle. Sophie caught on at once. "You heard her," she snapped, dragging a crying boy behind her. "Line up. Quiet feet. No pushing." Another iron claw wolf came through the tunnel on all fours, gray-furred and lean, its ribs showing beneath its coat. Ethan turned before it cleared the opening. His black body crossed the cellar in a blur. The sound they made when they collided was not like animals fighting. It was worse. It was bone, and rage, and old hatred. I covered the ears of the nearest little girl and pulled her against my skirt. "Look at me," I told the children. "Not them. Me." A boy named Peter was shaking so hard he could barely stand. He was 11, tall for his age, always trying to act older than he was. Now his lower lip trembled like any baby's. "Miss Alma," he whispered, "are we going to die?" "No," I said. I did not know if it was true. I said it anyway. "No, Peter, you are going to take Lily's hand. You are going to help Sophie get everyone to the stairs when I say. That is your job." His chin wobbled once. Then he nodded. Behind me, Grace groaned and tried to stand. "Stay down," I said without looking away from the children. "Don't you tell me what to do in my own kitchen," she rasped. "This is the cellar." "Still mine," I almost smiled. Almost. Boots thundered above us. Then Daniel appeared at the top of the stairs with 3 Vanguard fighters behind him. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, blood streaked across his jaw. But his eyes found Sophie first, then me, then the children. "Tunnel," I said. That was all he needed. Daniel came down fast. "Get them out." "There may be more upstairs," Sophie said. "There are fewer upstairs than down here." That settled it. We moved the children in a tight line. Sophie went first, half carrying a toddler against her hip. Peter held Lily's hand. Anna clutched the back of my skirt with one fist and kept her other hand over her eyes. Ethan stood between us and the tunnel. He was bleeding badly. A slash ran from his shoulder down his side, dark against darker fur. Another wound opened near his ribs every time he breathed. Still, he did not move from the tunnel entrance. His head was low, teeth bared, body braced as if he alone could hold back the entire mountain. Maybe he could. Maybe he would die trying. The thought struck me so hard I missed a step. His ear flicked toward me. Even like that, even half wild and covered in blood, he knew. He did not look back. He would not take his eyes from the danger. But his tail shifted once, barely an inch toward me. A foolish, aching warmth spread through my chest in the middle of all that horror. We got the last child onto the stairs just as another growl echoed from the tunnel. Daniel and his fighters formed a wall beside Ethan. For one long moment, nothing came out of the dark. Then a sound rose from inside it. Not a growl, a whistle. Sharp, human. Retreat. The shadows shifted. Then they were gone. No one moved. Not Daniel. Not Sophie. Not me. Only Ethan. He took one careful step forward, sniffed the tunnel, and let out a growl so deep dust fell from the ceiling beams. Daniel cursed under his breath. They had this planned. Grace, still sitting against the shelves, pressed a hand to her bleeding arm. Of course they did. Men like that don't have the decency to be stupid. I crossed to her and knelt. Let me see. It's a scratch. It is not a scratch. It will be once I say it is. Her face had lost some of its color beneath the soot, but her glare remained fully intact. I tore a strip from the bottom of my skirt and wrapped it around her arm with shaking hands. The cellar had gone quiet now except for breathing. Too much breathing. Too fast. Too afraid. Ethan turned from the tunnel. The black wolf looked at me. Every instinct in the room seemed to hold still. He was enormous in that low-ceilinged space, nearly brushing the beams above him. Blood matted his fur. His eyes shone gold, wild and bright. But he did not come closer. He waited. Just as he had promised. My throat tightened. I stood slowly. My legs felt unsteady beneath me, but I walked to him anyway. Daniel shifted like he meant to stop me, then thought better of it. When I was close enough to touch Ethan, I lifted my hand. Can I? The wolf lowered himself to the stone floor. Not fully, not weakly, deliberately. He bowed his head until his muzzle was level with my chest, until I did not have to reach above my shoulder to touch him. Until the choice was mine. I set my palm between his ears. The whole cellar went silent. His fur was coarse beneath my fingers, damp with sweat and rain and blood. Heat rolled off him in waves. Beneath my hand, a tremor moved through his great body, then settled. The golden fury in his eyes dimmed into something almost human. Something that made my heart hurt. You came, I whispered. His breath brushed my wrist. Dr. Brooks arrived then, bag in hand, out of breath and splattered with mud. Move aside. Let me see him. Ethan did not move until I took my hand away. Only then did he shift his weight and allow the doctor near his injured side. Dr. Brooks crouched, fingers careful as he parted the bloodied fur around the gash on Ethan's ribs. His expression tightened, then changed. He leaned closer. Daniel noticed. What? Dr. Brooks did not answer at first. The torn edges of Ethan's wound were drawing together. Slowly. Impossible and visible. Like unseen hands were stitching him from the inside. My breath caught. Dr. Brooks looked up at me, his face suddenly stripped of every bit of professional calm. Alma, he said quietly, this should not be happening. Before I could ask what he meant, boots pounded across the kitchen above us. A vanguard guard stumbled to the cellar doorway, chest heaving. Beta! Daniel turned. Report. The guard swallowed hard. Malcolm Reeves is gone. By sunrise, Vanguard did not look like a home. It looked like something had tried to eat it. The eastern wall lay open in a jagged wound of stone and splintered wood. Smoke still drifted from the far shed where someone had thrown a torch through the window. The courtyard was churned to mud, grass ripped up by claws, boots, and paws. Blood marked the ground in places no rain had reached yet. The worst part was the silence. Children were meant to fill a house like this with noise. Running feet, arguments over porridge, laughter that bounced off stair rails and made Grace threaten to hide every wooden spoon in the kitchen. That morning, the children whispered. They sat close together in the dining hall with blankets around their shoulders, bowls of oatmeal cooling untouched in front of them. The youngest ones refused to let go of whoever had picked them up after the attack. A little boy named Milo had fallen asleep against Daniel's knee and would wake every few minutes with a jerk, eyes wide, as if the cellar was still around him. I moved from table to table with a pitcher of warm milk and honey, touching shoulders, fixing blankets, murmuring names. Just 3 bites, Lily. Then you can stop. Peter, sit down before you fall down. Anna, baby, breathe through your nose. That's it. In and out. My skirt was still torn from where I'd wrapped Grace's arm. My hands smelled of vinegar, smoke, and soap, no matter how many times I scrubbed them. There was a bruise blooming along my hip from where I must have hit the cellar shelf, but I had not noticed it until Sophie pressed her fingers there and I hissed. You're going to let Dr. Brooks look at that, she said. I'm going to let Dr. Brooks look at people who are bleeding first. You count as people. I am not bleeding. Being stubborn is not the same as being fine. I gave her a look over the rim of the milk pitcher. She lifted both hands. Fine. Later. But I'm writing it down. On what? My list of reasons to yell at you. Despite myself, I smiled. It lasted only a second. Outside, they were laying bodies beneath white sheets. Vanguard had lost 4 in the night. 2 fighters I knew only by sight. One older man named Mr. Hale who used to carve little wooden animals for the children and leave them on windowsills. And a woman named Ruth, who had laughed louder than anyone during Sunday supper and had once made me dance in the kitchen, even though I told her I had 2 left feet. Ironclaw had lost more. No one said their names. That bothered me in a way I did not have words for yet. Near noon, the pack gathered beyond the orchard, where the trees thinned and the ground rose gently toward the woods. I stood with the children at the back. Some of them held my skirt. Others held hands. Grace stood near the front with her injured arm bandaged tight against her chest, her chin lifted like she would rather die than lean on anyone. Ethan stood alone before the graves. He had shifted back some time before dawn. From a distance, he looked carved out of the same cold stone as the estate walls. Black coat, dark hair, shoulders squared despite the bandages beneath his shirt. His face gave nothing away, but I had seen his wounds knitting themselves together in the cellar. I had seen Dr. Brooks's expression. I had seen fear there, and wonder. Daniel read the names. The pack answered each one with a low murmur I felt in my bones more than heard. When Mr. Hale's name was spoken, Milo started to cry. I knelt and pulled him against me. His little fists twisted into my cardigan. He made me a fox, Milo whispered. I know. It had 1 ear bigger than the other. That sounds like a very special fox. Milo's face crumpled. I wanted him to make me a wolf next. I closed my eyes for a moment and held him tighter. When the last grave was covered, Ethan stepped forward. He did not make a speech. There were no grand promises, no alpha thunder, no sharp words about revenge. He simply placed his hand on the fresh earth and bowed his head. Every wolf in the clearing followed. I did too. The wind moved through the trees. Somewhere far off, a crow called once and went silent. Then the pack howled. I had heard howls before, in the distance, through glass, in the dark. Never like this. This was grief made sound. It rose around me, deep and aching, until the hair along my arms lifted and my throat tightened. The children howled too, some with little broken voices that wobbled halfway through. Anna pressed her face into my side, not making a sound at all. I could not howl. So I hummed, softly at first, then steadier. An old hymn my grandmother used to sing while hanging laundry in the Kentucky heat. Grace heard me. Her eyes shifted toward me, wet and sharp. Then she began to hum along. By the time the pack's voices faded, mine and Grace's were the last sounds left. Ethan turned. His eyes found me. For a moment, across the graves and the torn mourning and all the things we had not said, he looked less like an alpha than a man standing at the edge of too much loss. Then someone called for him near the broken wall, and the moment was gone. The rest of the day passed in pieces. I helped sort blankets, counted children, found dry socks, wrote names on a list because lists were one of the few things in the world that made sense when everything else had teeth. Grace tried to return to the kitchen before Dr. Brooks cleared her. You have 1 good arm, I told her. I have 2 good arms. One is merely being dramatic. You lost enough blood to make Daniel look nervous. Daniel looks nervous if Sophie climbs a ladder. From across the room, Daniel said, "Because she climbs ladders like she's daring God to interfere." Sophie, carrying a crate of bandages, pointed at him. I heard that. For once, good. The small argument warmed the room for half a minute. Then a child cried out in his sleep, and all of us went quiet again. Late afternoon found me outside the medical room with a tray I did not remember filling. Tea, bread, a bowl of soup. Someone had to make sure Ethan ate, and apparently my feet had decided that someone was me before my pride could object. The door was half open. Dr. Brooks's voice carried through first. "If you tear those stitches, I'll strap you to this table myself." Ethan's answer was low. "You would try." "I would succeed. I have sedatives and no respect for alpha foolishness." I knocked with my elbow. Both men looked over. Ethan sat on the edge of the examination table without a shirt. I stopped in the doorway. There were moments when a person's body could become a map, and Ethan's was one I had not been prepared to read. Old scars crossed his chest and ribs, silvered lines over muscle and brown gold skin. New cuts, still red and angry, marked his shoulder and side. Bandages lay discarded near his hip, where Dr. Brooks must have removed them to inspect the healing. His dark hair was damp from washing out blood. His beard shadowed a jaw clenched tight enough to hurt. He looked wounded. He also looked alive, in a way that made something low in my belly pull taut. I hated that I noticed. I hated more that he noticed me noticing. His eyes darkened, but he did not move. Dr. Brooks, damn him, looked between us like a man watching the weather gather. "Miss Wells." "I brought food," I said. "A miracle," Dr. Brooks replied. "Maybe he'll listen to you." "I doubt that." Ethan's mouth twitched, almost a smile, though it vanished quickly. I set the tray on the side table. "How bad is it?" Dr. Brooks's hand hovered over Ethan's ribs. "It should be worse." "That is not an answer." "No," he said quietly. "It is not." Ethan looked at him. "Nathan." Dr. Brooks sighed. "His wounds are closing faster than they have in years. The deep tears from last night should still be open. They are not. The claw marks along his side have already stopped bleeding. The older scar tissue is changing too." "Changing how?" I asked. "Softening, waking. I don't have a better word for it." The room felt suddenly too small. Ethan's gaze stayed on me, steady and careful. "You should be resting," I said, because that was safer than asking the question burning between us. "So should you." "I'm not the one Dr. Brooks threatened to strap down." "You would not need sedatives," Ethan said. I raised an eyebrow. "No?" "No." His voice dropped slightly. "You would only have to ask." Heat touched my face and neck. Not embarrassment exactly, but something close enough to make me look at the soup. Dr. Brooks cleared his throat with exaggerated force. "On that note, I'm going to check the supply room. Try not to reopen anything while I'm gone. Wounds, arguments, mating bonds, whatever else is currently bleeding in this house." He left before either of us could answer. The silence afterward came slowly, like snow covering a field. Ethan looked down at his hands. There was dried blood under his nails, even after washing. "I should have killed him." I did not have to ask who. "Maybe," I said. His eyes lifted. "I won't pretend Malcolm deserves mercy. I saw what he did. I saw what he sent into that cellar." My fingers curled around the edge of the tray. "But if you had stayed to kill him, those children might be dead." His jaw tightened. "You chose them," I said. "That matters. He escaped." "He did. He will come again. Probably." A muscle jumped in his cheek. "You say that very calmly." "I am not calm." I stepped closer, stopping where there was still space between us. "I am tired. I am angry. I am scared enough that if I think too hard, I might sit on this floor and not get up for an hour. But I know what I saw. You heard Grace scream, and you came. That is not failure, Ethan. He closed his eyes. For the first time all day, his shoulders shifted, not quite falling, not quite surrendering, just easing under the weight of being seen. When he opened his eyes again, there was something raw in them. I frightened you last night. A lot frightened me last night. I mean me. I swallowed. The wolf. The blood. The cellar going silent as I touched him. No, I said slowly. Not the way you think. He studied my face as if searching for the lie. I gave him none. He looked away first. Alma, there is something I need to say again, and I need you to hear it without the chaos around us. My fingers went still. He slid off the table carefully, keeping one hand braced near his ribs. He did not come closer. I crossed a line in the kitchen. His voice was quiet, each word held with deliberate care. I kissed you without asking. I let the bond and my own selfishness become an excuse. It was wrong then. It is wrong now. No wound, no wolf, no instinct changes that. My chest tightened in a way that was not pain, but was not easy either. I have forgiven you, I said. His throat moved. You do not have to. I know. That seemed to strike him harder than if I had shouted. I took a breath and let it out slowly. Forgiving you does not mean it did not matter. It did. It still does. Not because I want to punish you, but because I need to trust that you understand what you took from me in that moment. His eyes held mine. My choice, I said. Yes. The word was rough. I came here as a teacher, I continued. Then I found children with claws and an estate full of secrets, and a man who looks at me like I am both salvation and trouble. I am trying to understand a world that keeps changing under my feet. If I choose you, Ethan, it has to be because I choose, not because a bond pulls, not because your wolf wants, not because everyone else seems to know something about my life before I do. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, I will never take from you again. The promise settled between us, heavier than a vow said before witnesses. I believed he meant it. That did not make it simple. I stepped close enough to smell soap on his skin beneath the sharper scent of medicine, close enough that his breathing changed, close enough that I could have lifted my hand to his chest and felt his heart. I did not. Then let me come to you when I'm ready, I said. His eyes darkened again, but this time he held himself still. I can do that. Can you? His mouth softened at the corner, but the smile did not quite form. No, he said honestly, but I will. That answer, more than any perfect one, eased something inside me. From the hallway, a child cried out. I turned at once. Ethan reached as if to steady me, then stopped before his fingers touched my sleeve. The small restraint did more to me than the touch might have. I met his eyes. Thank you. He nodded once. Together, without touching, we went toward the sound. That night, the children slept in the great room instead of the dormitories. Mattresses and blankets covered the floor from fireplace to window. Grace sat in a chair with her bandaged arm propped on pillows, pretending she was awake and fooling no one. Daniel stood near the doors. Sophie moved among the little ones with water cups and whispered threats about anyone who kicked in their sleep. I sat with Anna tucked against one side and Milo against the other. Ethan stood in the doorway for a long time. Anna saw him first. Alpha Ethan? He straightened. Yes? Are the bad wolves coming back tonight? The room held its breath. Ethan looked at me, a question in his eyes. I nodded. He entered slowly, giving the children time to see him as a man, and not the black wolf from the cellar. No, he said, not tonight. How do you know? Peter asked from his blanket. Because Daniel has patrols on every border, because every entrance is guarded, because I am still breathing. Anna considered that. Will you keep breathing? Something flickered across Ethan's face. I touched Anna's hair. That is a fair question. Ethan crouched several feet away, careful even with the children. I will do my best. Anna crawled out from under my arm and went to him. He froze. She climbed straight into his lap. The alpha of Vanguard looked down at that little girl as if she had handed him a bomb. Sophie snorted softly from across the room. I pressed my lips together. Milo followed Anna, then Lily, then 2 more. Within minutes, Ethan was sitting on the floor with 5 children leaning against him, his back against the wall, his wounded side carefully protected. His expression remained grave, but his hand rested lightly on Anna's shoulder, not holding her there, letting her stay. I watched until my eyes burned. Much later, after the children had finally drifted into uneasy sleep, Sophie dragged me upstairs and shoved a cup of tea into my hands. My room smelled faintly of smoke from my clothes. The curtains were drawn. The bed had been made by someone else, probably Sophie, because the quilt corners were tucked with military precision she would deny caring about. She sat cross-legged at the foot of the bed. "Drink." I obeyed. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Outside, hammers knocked against broken stone. Somewhere below, a guard changed watch. Vanguard was wounded, but not sleeping. Sophie studied me over her cup. "You're thinking too loud." "I have a lot to think about." "No kidding." I rubbed my thumb along the warm ceramic. "His wounds are healing." "I know." "Because of me?" Her expression shifted. Not surprise. Confirmation. I set the cup down carefully before I spilled it. "Sophie." She looked toward the closed door, then back at me. "What?" I lowered my voice. "What happens when a human woman chooses to fully mate with an alpha?" All the humor drained from her face. She unfolded her legs and stood. "Sophie?" She crossed the room, turned the lock on my door, and faced me with eyes far too serious for comfort. "Before I answer that," she said, "you need to understand one thing." My heart began to pound. "What thing?" Sophie swallowed. "If Ethan claims you under the full moon, Alma, the bond may not be the only thing that changes." Sophie's warning sat between us like a lit match. I stared at her from my bed, both hands wrapped around a cup of tea I had forgotten to drink. The room was quiet except for the old pipes ticking in the walls and the distant sound of hammers below, where men were already trying to make the broken house look whole again. "What changes?" I asked. Sophie did not answer right away. That alone told me enough to make my stomach tighten. She sat on the edge of my bed, her bare feet tucked beneath her nightgown, hair coming loose around her face. For once, she did not look like she had a joke waiting in her mouth. She looked tired, young, afraid. "I don't know all of it," she said. "That is not comforting. It isn't meant to be." I set the tea aside. "Sophie." She rubbed both hands over her face. "A claiming bond between wolves is already powerful. Between an alpha and his mate, it's worse, stronger, deeper. But when the mate is human..." She looked toward the locked door, as if someone might hear us through the wood. "There are stories." I have learned to dislike that sentence. Good. It usually means trouble. I folded my legs beneath me and waited. Sophie sighed. "Some human mates only feel the bond. Emotions, mostly. Pain sometimes. Desire. Fear. It depends on the strength of the alpha and whether the mate accepts the claim willingly. Willingly matters?" Her eyes snapped back to me. "Yes!" The force of it settled something in me. "Good," I said. "It matters more than anything. A forced claim can turn poisonous. It can make both people sick. Wolves don't like to admit that because they enjoy pretending fate excuses every stupid thing they do." I thought of Ethan in the kitchen, his hands on me, his mouth taking what I had not offered. Then I thought of him in the medical room, stopping himself before touching my sleeve. "Ethan knows that now," I said quietly. Sophie studied me. "Do you?" I met her eyes. "I do." She nodded once, accepting that. "Then there are other stories. Human mates gaining sharper senses after the claim, hearing better, healing faster, living longer than they should. That sounds impossible." Sophie gave me a look. "You teach children who turn furry under the full moon?" "Fair point." And then there are the old stories, she continued, voice lower. The ones no one likes repeating. My skin prickled. Say it. Some human women claimed by alphas changed. Changed how? I don't know, she swallowed. Not fully wolf, not fully human either. Something between, something the council doesn't like talking about. Outside, a hammer struck the stone 3 times in steady rhythm. I looked down at my hands. Warm brown fingers, short nails. A faint cut across one knuckle from broken glass in the cellar. My body had always been mine. Soft where it was soft. Strong where it needed to be. Tired when children ran me ragged. Hungry when Grace baked biscuits. Mine. The thought of a bite, a moon, a bond reaching beneath my skin and making me into something else made my breath go shallow. Sophie reached for my hand. Alma, I'm not telling you this to scare you away from him. Are you sure? No. Her mouth twisted. Maybe a little, but only because I love you and because Ethan will sacrifice himself on the altar of your choice until he bleeds out, which is noble and annoying. Someone has to tell you the ugly parts. I squeezed her fingers. Thank you. She squeezed back. Also, if you ask any of this at breakfast, Daniel may die. Despite everything, I almost laughed. I make no promises. By morning, I had slept maybe 2 hours. The rest of the night had been spent staring at the ceiling, listening to the estate groan around me. Wind slipped through places the attack had opened. Men crossed the courtyard with lumber. Somewhere below, a child woke crying and was soothed back to sleep by Grace's rough, gentle voice. When I came down to breakfast, I carried a notebook. If my life was going to become impossible, I intended to take notes. The dining hall still smelled faintly of smoke, but the tables had been scrubbed clean. Someone had hung blankets over 2 broken windows. Children sat in small clusters, eating porridge and toast, while guards stood near the doors. The room had bruises, but it was breathing. Grace was at the adult table, one arm in a sling, glaring at a bowl of oatmeal, like it had personally offended her. Daniel sat beside Sophie, reading a patrol report with one hand and holding coffee with the other. Dr. Brooks had a plate of eggs he had not touched. Ethan was not there. Of course he was not. I sat down across from Daniel and opened my notebook. Sophie froze with a spoon halfway to her mouth. Alma. I have questions. Daniel did not look up. That sounds ominous. It is only ominous because everyone here answers simple questions like they have swallowed a funeral bell. Grace snorted. Dr. Brooks glanced at my notebook. Medical questions? Some? That is never how I like a conversation to begin. I turned to a clean page. Is sex the same as claiming? Daniel choked on his coffee so hard Sophie had to hit him between the shoulders. Grace closed her eyes. Lord, give me strength. Dr. Brooks took off his spectacles and pinched the bridge of his nose. I waited with my pencil poised. Daniel coughed into his napkin. Could we maybe not? No, I said. We could maybe answer the question instead of acting like I asked whether wolves have tails. They do, Grace muttered, sometimes at inconvenient hours. Sophie made a strangled sound. I looked at Dr. Brooks. I am not a child. I am a grown woman. I understand the general mechanics, but apparently werewolves have rules attached to everything, including breakfast, doors, moons, biting, and men who heal when I am standing too close. So I am asking plainly. Dr. Brooks put his spectacles back on with great care. No, sex is not the same as claiming. Relief loosened one knot in my chest. I wrote that down. Grace leaned back in her chair. Honey, the dick is not the claim. The teeth are. Daniel made a sound like he wanted to leave his body. I blinked at her. Then, despite the ache of the past 2 days, I laughed. It came out rough and surprised, but it was real. Grace pointed her spoon at me. Don't laugh. You asked. I appreciate the clarity. Crude, Dr. Brooks said, but medically and culturally accurate. Sophie buried her face in both hands. I begged you not to do this at breakfast. You warned me Daniel might die. He hasn't. Daniel was still coughing. Barely. I glanced toward the doorway, half expecting Ethan to appear now that his name had been dragged into the room by implication. He did. Because of course he did. He stepped into the dining hall with mud on his boots, a dark coat over his shoulders, and a freshly wrapped bandage visible at the open collar of his shirt. His gaze swept the room first like an alpha counting exits and threats. Then it landed on me, then on my notebook. Then on Daniel, who looked like a man who had just survived a duel. Ethan's expression did not change, but something in his eyes sharpened. Did I interrupt? Yes, Daniel said. No, I said at the same time. Grace lifted her mug. We were discussing dicks and teeth. Ethan went very still. Sophie whispered, I hate this family. The corner of Dr. Brooks's mouth twitched. Ethan looked at me again, and this time there was heat under the restraint. Not crude, not careless, just a quiet awareness that moved through the space between us and found every nerve I owned. I held his gaze. I had questions, I said. I see that. I am getting answers. His voice lowered. Good. Then he did something that irritated me more than if he had ordered me to stop. He nodded politely, turned to Daniel, took the patrol report, and discussed the border as if my notebook had not nearly set the table on fire. As if he had not heard the word dick attached to him in a room full of people, as if he were made of stone. I knew better. His hand tightened once around the report. Only once. The day stretched long and gray. I spent the morning with the children, trying to return them to lessons in the gentlest way possible. Not arithmetic, not spelling drills. We drew maps of safe places. We wrote down names of people we trusted. We practiced what to do if the horn sounded again. Peter drew the cellar with black scribbles over the tunnel. Anna drew Ethan as a wolf, so large he did not fit on the page. When she showed it to me, she whispered, he was scary, but not to me. I smoothed a curl back from her forehead. Sometimes scary things stand between you and worse things. Like Grace? I glanced across the room, where Grace sat in a chair overseeing lunch preparations she was not supposed to be involved in. Yes, I said, exactly like Grace. By afternoon, I'd seen Ethan 4 times, once near the courtyard giving orders, once in the hall speaking with Dr. Brooks, once outside the schoolroom where he stopped long enough to count the children through the open door, and once at the bottom of the stairs where he saw me coming down, changed direction, and walked away. That last one lit my temper like a candle. Not blazing, just steady. By evening, the estate had settled into a watchful kind of quiet. Lanterns burned in the corridors. Guards moved in pairs. The broken wall stood under repair, but the gap was still there, covered by temporary beams and men with rifles. I found Ethan on the terrace. Of course I did. The sky was deep blue, nearly black, with clouds dragging across the moon. Cold air touched my cheeks and slipped beneath my cardigan. Ethan stood near the stone railing, one hand resting on it, the other tucked carefully against his side. You have been avoiding me, I said. He did not turn. I have been giving you room. You are giving me an empty county. That made him look back. Moonlight caught the hard line of his jaw. He looked tired, not weak, never that, but worn down to the bone in places he would not let anyone see for long. You asked to come to me when you were ready, he said. I did. I am trying to honor that. I stepped onto the terrace. Honoring me does not require pretending I am furniture. His mouth tightened. I came closer, leaving several feet between us, because I wanted him listening, not fighting himself. Everyone keeps treating my innocence like it is fragility, like desire is something that will happen to me instead of something I might feel. I am tired of it. His eyes darkened. Alma. No, I shook my head. Let me finish. He went silent. I may be untouched, Ethan, but I am not made of glass. The words hung there, warm against the cold air. His hand flexed on the railing. I know. he said. Do you? His gaze moved over my face, slow and careful, like touching without touching. Yes. Then why do you keep stepping away from me like wanting you might bruise me? His breathing changed, barely, but I heard it. He turned fully then, broad shoulders blocking the view of the ruined wall behind him. Because I do not trust what I become when I want you. The honesty of it struck deeper than any sweet answer would have. I held my ground. What do you become? His laugh was soft, humorless. Hungry. The word moved through me like a hand sliding down my spine. I should have looked away. I did not. I am not asking you to be harmless, I said. I am asking you to be honest. Something in him shifted. The alpha. The wolf. The man who had held himself back so hard it must have hurt. I want to touch you, he said, voice rough. Every time you walk into a room, I want my hands on you. I want your scent on my skin. I want to know what sounds you make when you stop thinking and start feeling. And I hate myself for wanting it, when you are still trying to decide if I'm safe. My pulse beat once, hard. Then again. Ethan. He looked away. That is why I stepped back. I crossed the last few feet between us. He went utterly still. Ask me, I said. His eyes returned to mine. For what? To kiss me. The silence tightened. Then quietly, May I kiss you, Alma? Yes. He did not grab. He did not rush. He bent his head slowly, giving me time to change my mind with every inch. I did not. His mouth touched mine, and the cold night fell away. The kiss was careful at first. Almost too careful. A question pressed against my lips. I answered by stepping closer and lifting my hands to his coat. His chest rose beneath my fingers. When his hands hovered at my waist, not landing, waiting, my heart turned over. You can touch me there, I whispered against his mouth. His fingers settled at my waist, warm, firm, still restrained. The restraint was its own kind of heat. I kissed him harder. A sound came from low in his chest, and his grip tightened just enough to remind me what he was holding back. My body answered before my mind could make sense of it. Hips drawing closer, breath catching, hands sliding up to the back of his neck. His mouth left mine and pressed once to my jaw. I shivered, not from the cold. Ethan stopped at once. I almost cursed him for it. His forehead rested against mine. If I do not stop now, I will want more. I know. His eyes closed. Alma. The way he said my name was half prayer, half warning. I touched his face, thumb brushing the edge of his beard. I am still thinking. I know. But I am also feeling. His eyes opened. There was so much in them that I had to breathe through it. Good, he said softly. Feel all of it. Then choose. I did not sleep after that. I lay in my bed with the quilt pulled to my waist, and the moonlight pressed thin across the floor. My body still remembered his hands. My mouth remembered the weight of his. My mind kept circling Sophie's warning, Grace's blunt answer, Dr. Brooks's careful explanation. The dick was not the claim. The teeth were. Choice mattered. Fear mattered too. But I was beginning to resent how much room it had taken in my life. Near midnight, I got up. I put on my robe. Then I took it off and put on my cardigan instead, because if I went to Ethan looking like I had floated there in a fever, I would lose my nerve. I braided my hair with clumsy fingers, then undid it because it pulled too tight. Finally, I left my curls alone and opened the door. The corridor was dim. A guard at the end glanced at me, then wisely looked away. Ethan's room was in the older wing, past portraits of stern-faced alphas, and windows that looked out over the damaged courtyard. Light showed beneath his door. I stood there for a moment, hand lifted. Then I knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Ethan stood on the other side in a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, hair damp as if he had just washed. His eyes moved over my face, not lower, though I knew it cost him. "Alma?" My heart was beating hard enough to make me angry. I don't want fear making my choices anymore. His hand tightened around the doorframe. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he said, low and careful, "Tell me what you want." I stepped closer, close enough that the warmth of him reached me through the doorway. "You," I said. The word left me steadier than I felt. Ethan stood in the doorway of his bedroom, one hand braced against the frame as if the old wood was the only thing keeping him from moving toward me. Firelight burned low behind him, turning the room gold at the edges. His face was unreadable to anyone who did not know him. I knew him better now. I saw the fear. Not fear of me, not exactly. Fear of hurting me, fear of wanting too much. Fear that one wrong breath might take away the choice he had promised would always be mine. "Alma," he said, his voice low. "Do not say that because tonight frightened you." "It did frighten me." His jaw tightened. I stepped over the threshold before he could misunderstand. "But I am tired of fear being the loudest thing in the room." He did not move aside until I was fully inside. Then he closed the door behind me, leaving it unlocked. I glanced back at the latch. "You can lock it." His hand hovered near the bolt. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Only then did he turn it. The click sounded small, final, but not trapping. Private. His room suited him in a way that made my chest ache. Dark wood, old stone fireplace, a desk stacked with patrol reports, maps, and a knife laid beside a half-finished cup of coffee. The bed was broad and neatly made, blankets folded with the same severe discipline he carried in his shoulders. I looked at that bed and had to swallow. Ethan noticed. Of course he noticed. "We can sit," he said. "We can talk. You can change your mind now or in 5 minutes or in the middle of anything. I will stop. I know." "No." He came no closer. "Hear me. If you say stop, I will stop. If you hesitate and cannot speak, I will stop. If your body tells me what your mouth does not, I will stop. There will be no anger, no argument, no wounded pride." My hands curled into the sleeves of my cardigan. "You make it sound like a contract," I said. "It is a vow." That stole some of my teasing. The fire cracked softly. Outside his windows, Vanguard groaned under repairs and grief. Men were awake along the walls, children slept under guard. Malcolm Reeves was somewhere in the dark, wounded and dangerous. And I was here. Because I wanted to be. I crossed the room until I stood close enough to touch him. "Then I have one too," I said. His eyes held mine. "I will tell you the truth," I continued. "If I'm afraid, if something hurts, if I want more, if I want less." My mouth went dry, but I forced myself on. "I will not make you guess." Something in his face shifted, not soft exactly, but opened. "Thank you," he said. I lifted my hands to the buttons of his shirt. "May I?" His breath left him slowly. "Yes." The first button slipped free, then the next. My fingers were not as steady as I wanted them to be, but he did not rush me. He stood there like a man enduring a holy trial, eyes fixed on my face while I uncovered scarred skin and muscle and old wounds silvered by time. When I pushed the shirt from his shoulders, I saw again what battles had done to him. I touched a scar along his ribs. He went still. Who did this? No one who matters tonight. That is not an answer. "No," he said, "but it is the only one I can give you while you're looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you see more than I meant to show." My throat tightened. "I do." His hand lifted toward my cheek, then stopped halfway. I leaned into it before he could ask. His palm settled against my face, warm and careful. The tenderness of it nearly undid me more than heat would have. Then I stepped back. He let his hand fall. "Your turn," I said. A faint crease appeared between his brows.
"Alma, if I am going to be bear in this room, I do not want to be the only one shaking."
His mouth parted slightly. For one brief, satisfying moment, the Alpha of Vanguard looked entirely at a loss. Then he obeyed. He removed the rest of his clothing with none of the confidence I had expected from a man built like war and midnight. He was controlled, yes, but not casual. Every movement carried restraint. When he stood before me fully revealed, the air seemed to thicken. My eyes dipped. I had thought myself prepared. I was not. Heat rushed up my neck and across my cheeks. My courage, which had carried me across his threshold just fine, suddenly made a swift attempt to abandon me. I looked at him, all of him, and my mind produced several loud, practical concerns that no romantic poem had ever had the decency to address. Ethan's expression changed immediately. "Alma," he said, already stepping back, "we do not have to—" "Can I touch you?" The words came out before he could finish ruining my nerves with his nobility. He froze, not in refusal, in shock. His eyes darkened, then closed for one hard second. When they opened again, there was so much hunger banked behind control that my breath caught. "You do not have to prove anything," he said. "I'm not proving." My voice trembled, but I did not look away. "I'm curious." A rough sound left him, almost a laugh, almost pain. "Of course you are." "Is that a yes?" His throat moved. "Yes." I reached for him. What followed belonged to the hush between us. The firelight, his uneven breath, my hand learning enough to make my eyes widen and my nerves flare bright again. He did not guide me. He did not press for more. He only stood there with his hands clenched at his sides, letting me decide what I wanted to know. When I looked up at him, both of us were breathing harder. "Are all werewolf alphas built like this?" I asked, louder than I meant to. "Or are you personally trying to frighten me into an early grave?" For half a heartbeat he stared. Then he dropped his head back and laughed. Not much, not freely, but enough. The sound warmed the room. "No," he said, voice rough with amusement. "Not all. That is not as comforting as you think." His smile faded into something more dangerous, more tender. "We can stop." "No, Alma." I stepped close and set both hands on his arms. Strong arms, steady arms. Arms I had seen carry children, fight enemies, and hold themselves back for my sake. "Go on," I whispered, "before I change my mind." His gaze sharpened. "You are allowed to change your mind." "I know." I pressed my fingers into him. "I am choosing not to." That reached him. I saw it land. He bent slowly, giving me time even then, and kissed me. The kiss started gently. Too gentle, maybe, because I made a small, impatient sound against his mouth and pulled him closer. That broke something careful in him. Not his control, but his distance. His hands came to my waist, firm and warm through my cardigan. He kissed me again, deeper this time, and the room tilted. I had been kissed before by Ethan. This was different. This was not a question asked at the edge of a terrace. This was the answer behind a locked door. My cardigan fell first, then my nightdress. He asked before every touch until I caught his wrist and placed his hand where I wanted it. His eyes closed. "You will be the death of me," he murmured. Dramatic. Accurate. I smiled against his mouth, then forgot how when his lips moved to my throat. For a moment his mouth brushed the place between my neck and shoulder. He stopped. Every part of him went rigid. I knew what he was thinking before he said a word. Teeth. Claiming. Bond. I threaded my fingers into his hair and drew him back until I could see his eyes. "Not that," I said. "No." His answer came instantly. "Not tonight. Not unless you ask." Grace was very clear at breakfast. My voice shook, but humor helped me breathe.
The dick is not the claim." He stared at me. Then his forehead dropped to my shoulder with a groan. I may never recover from that conversation. I found it educational. "I am aware," I laughed, and he kissed the laugh from my mouth. After that, there was no more room for jokes. Only breath. Heat. The bed creaking softly beneath us as he laid me down with care that bordered on reverence. I reached for him first because I needed to know I was not simply being carried along by his wanting. He let me pull him down, let me touch his face, let me shift, decide, ask. When the last boundary between us came close, my heart began beating so hard I thought he must hear it. He did. "Alma." "Yes." "Look at me." I did. His face hovered over mine, fierce and strained and beautiful in the firelight. "Are you sure?" No hesitation. "Yes." At first, all I knew was pressure, then pain, sharp enough to steal my breath. My fingers dug into his arms. Ethan stopped at once. "No," he said, voice ragged. "No, we stop. Wait. I will not hurt you. You are not deciding for me." I held tighter, nails pressing into muscle. "Breathe with me." His eyes were wild with restraint, but he obeyed. In, out, again. The pain did not vanish. It spread unfamiliar and deep, a burn that made my body tense even as I tried to soften around it. Ethan remained still, shaking with the effort of holding himself back. "I can't," he whispered. "Alma, I can't do this if you're hurting." "You can if I tell you to go slowly." His jaw flexed. I touched his face. "I am afraid. I am sore. I am also still here." My thumb brushed the edge of his beard. "Continue." For a moment he looked broken by the trust. Then he moved, slowly. So slowly that every small motion became its own world. Pain, pressure, heat. His breath against my cheek, my hands locked around his arms, the scent of smoke in the blankets, the gold thread of the bond stirring under my ribs like something waking from sleep. I felt everything, too much at first, then differently. The sharpness softened by degrees. My body, stubborn and uncertain, began to listen. The pressure that had frightened me became fuller, warmer, threaded through with a strange ache that was not pain anymore. Ethan watched me the entire time, stopping when I tensed, moving only when I pulled him back. When pleasure came, it surprised me. Not delicate, not polite. Nothing like the quiet, tidy words women used when they spoke around desire, instead of through it. It rose through me in waves, fierce enough that I clung to him, and forgot to be embarrassed by the sounds I made. Ethan buried his face against my shoulder, not biting, never biting, and shuddered like a man holding back the sea. The bond flared, not a claim, not a chain, a bright living pulse between us that made his breath catch at the same moment mine did. Afterward, he gathered me into his arms and held me, as if I had given him something he did not deserve, and would spend the rest of his life protecting. Maybe I had. Maybe he would. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then my eyes stung. Ethan felt me tense. "Are you in pain?" "A little." He shifted as if to rise. I caught him. "Mostly I'm overwhelmed." He went still. "That is not regret," I added. His whole body seemed to release a breath. "No regret?" "No regret." His eyes closed. I touched his mouth with my fingertips. "You?" He looked at me then, and there was no alpha mask left. Only Ethan. Tired. Wounded. Awed. "Alma," he said softly. "Regret is not a word that belongs in this room." That ruined me a little. He brought water, a warm cloth, another blanket when I shivered. He asked before touching me until I finally opened one eye and said, "If you ask permission to hand me a pillow, I may smother you with it." His mouth twitched. Noted. I fell asleep with his arm around my waist and his heartbeat beneath my ear. No nightmare found me. Not one. Morning came in pale gold ribbons across the floor. I woke up slowly, warm under heavy blankets, Ethan's arm secure around my waist. For several seconds I did not move. I only looked at him. Peace changed his face. The hard lines were still there. Scars did not disappear because a man slept. But his brow had eased. His mouth was soft. He looked younger and older at once, like someone who had finally laid down a weapon after carrying it for years. Then I shifted and winced. Oh, my entire body remembered the night before. Ethan's eyes opened instantly. Alma? I'm fine. His gaze narrowed. That was too quick. I am mostly fine. He pushed himself up on one elbow. Where does it hurt? I gave him a look. He understood at once, and guilt crossed his face so fast I nearly groaned. Do not, I warned. I hurt you. I am sore. There is a difference. He did not look convinced, but he rose and reached for his clothes with the grim focus of a man preparing for battle. I prepared the washroom, he said. Hot water, clean towels. There are clothes for you by the basin. Sophie brought them before dawn. Sophie was here? She left them outside the door. That does not make me feel better. No, he admitted. It should not. The shower was hot enough to steam the old mirror. I stood under the water until my muscles loosened and my thoughts settled. Ethan had placed a stool beside the wall, along with soap, fresh linen, and a glass of water. The care of it made my chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with soreness. When I came back out, dressed in a loose morning gown, the worst of the ache had eased. Not all of it. I took 3 careful steps and immediately regretted trying to walk like a proud woman, instead of a woman who had made several bold decisions after midnight. Ethan noticed. Of course, he always noticed. Lie down, he said. I stiffened. Absolutely not. He stopped. Alma? If this is your idea of starting again, do not be a jerk. I cannot take anything right now. His eyes widened. Then understanding dawned, followed by horror. No, he said quickly. That is not what I meant. Good. I meant rest. He lifted both hands. Only rest. Or I can call Nathan. I would rather fight Malcolm with a spoon. Nathan is a doctor. Nathan has spectacles and opinions, and I have had enough of both. Ethan pressed his lips together. You are trying not to laugh, I said. I value my life. You should. I sat on the bed with as much dignity as I could salvage. Ethan knelt in front of me, careful not to touch my knees. The bond woke last night. Not fully, not claimed, but enough that I may be able to ease some of the soreness. How? Touch. Breath. The bond recognizes you now. His voice gentled. Only if you want. I studied him. There was no hunger in his face, only concern. All right, I said. He took my hands between his. For a moment, nothing happened. Then warmth moved through my palms. Not fire, not desire. Something quieter. A golden hum that traveled up my arms, settled beneath my ribs, then sank lower until the sharpest ache unwound. I exhaled. Ethan watched me like my comfort was the only command he cared about. Better? Yes, I whispered. The relief in his face nearly broke me open again. A thunderous knock struck the door. I jumped. Ethan's head snapped toward it with a growl that vibrated through the room. From the hallway, Sophie shouted, If you two are alive in there, breakfast is getting cold and everyone knows anyway. My whole body went hot. Sophie! Daniel barked from somewhere farther down the corridor. For God's sake! What? Sophie yelled back. Better me than Grace. I stared at Ethan. He closed his eyes. Everyone knows? I whispered. Another knock came, softer this time. Alma, Sophie said through the door, her voice suddenly less teasing. You need to come downstairs. Ethan stood slowly. The tenderness left his face piece by piece, replaced by the alpha. I gripped the blanket. What happened? A pause. Then Sophie answered. Every wolf in Vanguard felt the bond flare last night. Sophie said it through the door like a woman announcing a fire in the kitchen. For a few seconds, I did not move. Ethan stood beside the bed, shoulders squared, face unreadable in that dangerous way of his. The warmth from moments before was still in the room. Creased sheets, cooling steam from the washroom, the faint scent of soap on my skin. But Sophie's words changed the air. I looked down at my hands in my lap. "So," I said carefully, "when you say everyone?" From the hallway, Sophie answered, "I mean everyone." Daniel muttered something I could not hear. Then Grace's voice carried from farther away. "Tell them to come eat before I drag them out by their ears." I closed my eyes. Ethan made a low sound that might have been a sigh if he were any other man. "This is not how I wanted your morning to begin," he said. I looked up at him. "How exactly did you expect it to begin? With birds singing and no one knowing my business?" His mouth twitched despite himself. "Something like that." "Well," I pushed the blanket aside and stood with as much dignity as a sore woman could manage. "Apparently your pack has no manners and no privacy." They did not choose to feel it. No, but Sophie chose to yell it through a door. "That," he said, "is fair." I pointed at him. "Do not smile." "I would not dare." He was absolutely trying not to. I took one step toward the chair where Sophie had left my clothes, then another slower one. Ethan noticed. His amusement vanished so quickly it almost annoyed me. "Alma." "I am fine. You are walking like—" "Finish that sentence and sleep alone until winter." His jaw shut. Good man. By the time we opened the door, Sophie had stopped shouting and started pretending she had not been listening. Daniel stood behind her with one hand over his face, looking tired enough to age 10 years before breakfast. Grace waited at the end of the corridor with both eyebrows raised and a shawl thrown around her shoulders like a battlefield commander. She looked me up and down. Then she looked at Ethan. "Breakfast," she said. "And if anybody makes that girl feel ashamed, I'll break a spoon over their skull." I blinked. Ethan said, "Grace." "What?" She turned. "You were thinking it quieter. I said it useful." I followed them downstairs with Ethan half a step behind me. Not touching, though I could feel how badly he wanted to offer his arm. It warmed me more than if he had simply taken hold. He had learned the shape of restraint, and I was beginning to trust it. The dining hall was full when we entered. Conversation died. Not faded. Died. Spoons paused over bowls. Children twisted in their seats. Guards near the doors straightened. A woman mending a sleeve by the window set her needle down without looking away from me. Heat rose along my neck. I had stood before classrooms full of children with muddy boots and wild tempers. I had spoken at church socials, corrected grown men who thought a young teacher could be ignored, and once told a county official exactly where he could put his broken funding promise. None of that had prepared me for a room full of werewolves staring, as if my private choices had rung through the walls like a church bell. A little boy near the end of the table whispered, "Is she Luna now?" His sister elbowed him. "Hush!" Anna climbed off her bench and came running before anyone could stop her. She wrapped both arms around my waist, careful of nothing because she was 6 and love had no manners either. "Luna, Alma," she said into my skirt. The room went even quieter. My heart turned over. I looked down at her curls, at the small hands gripping me like I was something steady, in a world that kept breaking apart. "Just Alma is fine, sweetheart," I said softly. Anna leaned back and frowned. "But you feel different." A murmur moved through the adults. Ethan's presence shifted behind me. Not anger, warning. I placed my hand on Anna's head. "I am still me." She considered that, then nodded as if I'd answered a question bigger than the one she asked. "Can I sit by you?" Yes. That seemed to release the room's breath. We crossed to the table. Ethan pulled out a chair, then paused, eyes flicking to mine, asking. I sat, because I wanted to. Grace put a plate in front of me with eggs, toast, fried potatoes, and a look that dared me not to eat. Daniel cleared his throat. Alpha. Ethan remained standing. The quiet returned, but this time it belonged to him. No one, he said, voice carrying without effort, will pressure Alma Wells into a title, a bond, a ceremony, or a duty she has not chosen. Several eyes dropped. My fingers tightened around my fork. She is owed respect, Ethan continued, not because of what any of you felt last night, not because of me, because she has earned it from the first day she walked into this house. The room held still. She is not to be questioned, cornered, tested, scented, judged, or called Luna unless she permits it. A flush of emotion pressed behind my ribs, sharp enough that I had to look down at my plate. Ethan's voice softened only slightly. If you are grateful to her, show it by giving her room to breathe. Grace sniffed loudly. And food. A few children giggled. The tension cracked. Ethan sat beside me. His knee did not touch mine beneath the table, but I felt the space between us like a living thing. I leaned toward him just enough to murmur, "Thank you." His eyes stayed forward. You looked ready to stab someone with your fork. I had selected a target. Daniel? Too easy. His mouth twitched again. Across the table, Daniel looked suspicious. Why do I feel insulted? Because you are alert, I said. Sophie choked on her tea. For a little while, breakfast became breakfast again. Children argued over jam. Grace scolded Peter for feeding toast crust to the dog under the table. Dr. Brooks arrived late with ink on his sleeve and a medical bag in hand, took one look at me, then wisely asked Ethan about patrol injuries instead of my condition. I appreciated his survival instincts. But the word followed me all morning. Luna. It slipped from children by accident. It hid in the respectful nods of guards. It hovered in doorways and stopped conversations when I entered. Some faces softened when they saw me. Others became careful. A few looked at my throat, where there was no claiming mark, then looked away as if they had been caught doing something rude. By noon, I wanted to hide in the linen cupboard. Instead, I found a notebook. If Vanguard insisted on looking at me like I belonged to something larger than myself, then I needed to understand the shape of it. I started in the schoolroom. The children were restless, brittle with exhaustion and fear. Little ones startled at dropped chalk. Older ones pretended they were not listening for horns. No lesson on geography or multiplication was going to hold them. So I pushed the desks against the walls. We are making plans, I told them. Peter raised his hand. Battle plans? Safety plans. That sounds less interesting. It keeps you alive, so suffer through it. A few smiled. I drew the estate on the board as best I could. The main hall, kitchens, cellar, west stair, courtyard, broken wall. Then I marked exits in blue chalk and safe gathering points in yellow. Anna sat cross-legged near my feet. What if bad men come from the tunnel again? Then we do not all run to the same place and trap ourselves. My hand stilled for a breath. We learn more than one way out. The older children listened then. Really listened. By the time Grace came to fetch them for lunch, they had divided into groups by age, each with an older child responsible for two younger ones. They knew which horn meant cellar, which meant courtyard, and which meant stay hidden until an adult came. Grace stood in the doorway, watching. You just turned frightened pups into a marching army, she said. No. I wiped chalk dust from my fingers. I gave frightened children something to do with their hands. Her gaze softened. Then, because she was Grace, she ruined it. Eat something before you fall over and make the alpha bite through a wall. He does not bite through walls. She stared at me. I sighed. Fine, he might. After lunch, I moved to the old sitting room and began sorting records. There were too many children with no proper guardianship papers. Too many supplies stored by memory instead of list. Too many widows who knew where blankets were, but not whether there would be enough winter coats. Vanguard survived on devotion and panic was a poor filing system. Sophie helped me pull ledgers from a locked cabinet. Daniel found maps. Dr. Brooks brought medical notes for the children who had lingering injuries or shifting difficulties. By mid-afternoon, the table was covered in papers, ink bottles, and the crumbs of biscuits Grace had forced on us. That was when I heard the voices in the corridor. She has heart, an older woman said. No one can deny that. A man answered, heart does not make a Luna. My pen paused. Sophie stiffened beside me. The woman lowered her voice, though not enough. She is human. Kind, yes. Brave, certainly. But she cannot feel the pack the way one of us would. She cannot defend a challenge. She has no mark. And no idea what the council will do with her, the man said. Silence followed, then footsteps moved away. Sophie's face had gone tight with anger. I'll handle them. No. Alma, they are not wrong about all of it. She stared at me. I looked down at the list beneath my hand. 12 children without assigned winter boots, 3 whose guardians had died in the attack, 5 who needed night watches because they woke up screaming. I cannot defend a challenge, I said. I do not know your laws. I cannot shift or scent lies or hear danger in the woods. Sophie's mouth softened. That does not mean... I know what it does not mean. I dipped my pen in ink. It does not mean I am useless. That evening, when the adults gathered in the dining hall after the children had eaten, I stood at the front with my notebook open. My knees wanted to tremble. I did not let them. We need trauma watches for the next 2 weeks, I said. Children under 8 should not sleep more than 4 to a room unless an adult is present. Older children who want duties may help, but they are not guards. They are children. A few men shifted. I kept going. We need written supply records, not guesses, not ask Grace. If Grace dies, apparently none of you will know where Flower lives. Grace pointed at the room. She's right. We need emergency drills twice a week until every child can follow instructions half asleep. We need guardianship assignments updated before the next full moon, and we need a quiet room for children who are overwhelmed. Not punishment, not isolation. Rest. Daniel was taking notes. Dr. Brooks nodded slowly. Ethan stood in the back near the doors, arms folded, eyes on me. Not rescuing me, not speaking over me, watching. The warmth in his gaze nearly made me lose my place. I cleared my throat and looked back at the room. I am not your Luna because someone says a word at breakfast, but I am your teacher, and I will not have these children surviving one terror only to be abandoned to another. No one spoke. Then Grace slapped her hand on the table. Well, you heard her. Who's taking first watch? Chairs scraped, hands lifted. The room moved, and something in me moved with it. Later, I found myself in the pantry reaching for a jar of dried mint on a shelf designed by someone much taller and more irritating. A hand appeared above mine and took it down. Ethan stood close behind me. Showing off? I asked. Yes. I turned, and there he was, near enough that I could see the faint silver in his beard. You did well tonight, he said. I know. His eyes warmed. Then I ruined my own composure by adding, but you may say it again? He leaned closer, slow enough to let me stop him. You were extraordinary. My breath caught. I kissed him first. His hand found my waist, firm and familiar, and for 3 stolen seconds, the world shrank to the pantry's spice-sweet dark and the heat of his mouth. Then he pulled back with a restraint I could feel in the tremor of his fingers. You are still sore, he murmured. I smiled. I did not ask you to be noble. No, but you like it when I suffer. Only a little. His low laugh brushed my lips. Then the hall bell rang. Not the alarm horn, the formal bell at the front door. Ethan went still. By the time we reached the foyer, Daniel was already there with 2 guards. A rider stood just inside the entrance, rain dripping from his cloak onto the stone floor. In his gloved hand was a black envelope sealed with silver wax. The mark stamped into it was a crescent moon split by a blade. No one breathed. Daniel took the envelope, read the seal, and looked at Ethan. The council, he said. Ethan's face became stone. He broke the wax and unfolded the letter. I watched his eyes move over the page. Then he handed it to me. The words were written in sharp black ink.
By order of the Werewolf Council, Alpha Ethan Woods of Vanguard Pack is hereby summoned to present his human mate, Alma Wells, for formal judgment within 7 days. My fingers tightened around the paper. At the bottom, beneath the signatures, one final line weighted like a knife. Failure to comply will be considered an admission that the bond was unlawfully formed.
The council's seal left silver dust on my fingers. I stared at the letter long after I had read every word twice. The ink did not change. The threat did not soften. Around me, the foyer had gone so quiet I could hear rain ticking against the front steps, and Alma's breath beside me, controlled but not calm. Present his human mate for formal judgment. Judgment. My wolf lifted its head inside me with a silent snarl. Alma took the letter from my hand before I could crush it. She read slowly. Her warm brown eyes moved line by line. And with every passing second, her mouth settled into that stubborn shape I had come to know too well. Not fear, not obedience, temper. Grace muttered, "Bastards." Daniel did not correct her. Sophie crossed her arms. They waited until after the attack. They waited until they thought we were weak, Daniel said. Alma looked up from the page. What does unlawfully formed mean? No one answered quickly enough. Her gaze came to me. Ethan. I hated the sound of my name in that tone, not because she was angry, because she trusted me to tell her the truth, even when I wanted to spare her from it. I took the letter back and folded it along the crease. It means they intend to argue that the bond influenced you. Because you are human, you may not understand what happened between us. Her brows lifted. They think I tripped and fell into your bed by accident. Sophie made a strangled sound. Grace said, Lord, give me strength. Daniel turned his face away, but his shoulders shook once. Alma did not smile. No, I want to understand this clearly. They believe I'm too human to know my own, yes? My hand tightened around the paper. Some of them will. The words cost me more than I let show. Alma stepped closer. And you? You already know my answer. I want to hear it. I looked at her then. Really looked. She wore a loose morning dress, her curls pinned back carelessly, her face still soft with sleep and stubbornness. Last night had changed the bond between us, yes, but it had not made her less herself. If anything, it had made her more present in the room. Warmer, brighter, dangerous in a way no council elder would know how to measure. I believe you, I said. Before the bond, before my wolf, before any law written by men who were old when my grandfather was young. I believe you. Some of the strain left her shoulders, only some. Then tell me what they can do, she said. I should have taken her somewhere private. I should have sat her down, softened the edges, made the explanation less brutal. But Alma had never needed softness in place of truth, so I gave her the truth. If you remain unclaimed, the council can question whether the bond is stable. They can demand separation while they investigate. They can claim it is for your protection. Her eyes narrowed. My protection? Yes. From you. My jaw worked once. Yes. The foyer seemed to shrink around us. Alma looked down at the black envelope in my hand, then back at me. And if you claim me? My wolf surged so fast, I nearly stepped back from her. Daniel's attention sharpened. Sophie went still. Even Grace stopped muttering curses under her breath. I forced my voice to remain level. If I mark you under the full moon, before witnesses, you become my mate by old law. My Luna, if you accept the title. The council can still summon us, but they cannot remove you without challenging my claim. And any challenge to you becomes a challenge to me. Alma absorbed that in silence. Rain slid down the windows in thin silver lines. So, she said at last, they are less worried about the dick and more worried about the teeth. Daniel choked. Sophie slapped a hand over her mouth. Grace pointed at Alma. That is exactly right, honey. Despite everything, something close to a laugh moved through my chest. It hurt. Alma's gaze stayed on mine. Do not look amused. I am furious. I know. Good. I stepped closer, careful even then. Always careful now. Alma, listen to me. The claiming mark is not a legal trick. It is not armor I put on you because I'm afraid. Are you not afraid? Yes. The answer came without pride. I am terrified. Her expression changed. I lowered my voice. But I will take you to the council unmarked if that is what you choose. I will stand there while they insult me, insult the bond, insult my wolf, and I will not let them touch you. Her fingers curled around the edge of the letter. What happens to Vanguard if they decide against us? Daniel answered this time. They could sanction the pack, restrict trade, deny safe passage through council territory. Sophie added quietly. They could say any child taken in under Alma's authority has no recognized protection. Alma's eyes flicked toward the hall where the children slept beyond thick walls and tired guards. There it was, the blade they would use, not her fear for herself, her love for them. I hated the council more in that moment than I had hated Malcolm Reeves bleeding on my courtyard stones. Alma handed me the letter. When is the full moon? Tonight, Daniel said. Her gaze returned to me. I did not move. I barely breathed. Of course it is, she said. By dusk, Vanguard knew. No one announced it with a bell or a proclamation. News moved through a pack like weather through leaves. Quietly at first, then everywhere. The council summons the full moon. The old right, the claiming. I spent the afternoon in motion because standing still near Alma was impossible. Daniel reviewed patrol routes. Sophie kept the children occupied with lantern making in the schoolroom. Grace cooked enough to feed grief, fear, and gossip all at once. Dr. Brooks found me in the armory and checked the scars across my ribs without asking why my wolf would not settle. You're healing faster, Nathan said, pressing 2 fingers near a wound that should have remained tender for weeks. Too fast to ignore? I'm aware. Tonight may accelerate it. I looked at him. Or break something. His expression did not change, but his silence had weight. My concern is not your body, Ethan. It is your restraint. That earned him a low growl. Nathan snapped his bag shut. Growl at me if it makes you feel better. You know I'm right. I turned away. He sighed. She is not afraid of your wolf. She should be. No, he said. You are afraid enough for both of you. I had no answer for that. When the moon rose, the pack gathered in the eastern courtyard. Lanterns hung from iron hooks along the repaired wall. Their flames bent in a cool wind, throwing gold across stone. Faces, bandaged arms, children wrapped in blankets, widows holding one another upright. Above us, the full moon climbed clean and bright over the black line of trees. Old power lived in nights like this. Not magic exactly. Not the way humans told it in stories. Memory, blood, vow. I stood at the center of the courtyard with Daniel at my right. My wolf paced beneath my skin, restless but silent, waiting. Then the great doors opened. Alma stepped out. For one breath, the courtyard vanished. She wore deep blue, the color of late evening, simple and soft at the waist. Grace had pinned her curls away from one side of her neck, leaving the line from throat to shoulder bare to the moonlight. Her brown skin held the lantern glow beautifully, warm against the cool silver night. She did not look like a queen from old pack songs. She looked like Alma Wells, teacher, human, brave enough to walk into a circle of wolves and not lower her eyes. Anna tried to run to her, but Sophie caught the back of her sweater and whispered something that made the child settle, though she bounced on her toes. Alma crossed the stones alone. That mattered. Every wolf there understood it. She stopped before me. I wanted to reach for her. I did not. Daniel stepped forward, voice formal. Alma Wells of Kentucky, you stand before Vanguard Pack under the full moon. Do you come by force? No. By bargain? No. By fear. Her gaze flicked to me. For a heartbeat, I felt the faintest brush of her through the bond. Not words, a warm pressure, steadying herself. Then she answered, no. Daniel's voice softened. How do you come? Al lifted her chin. By choice. The words moved through the courtyard like a living thing. My turn came. I faced the pack, though every instinct in me wanted only her. This is Alma Wells, I said. She was not found for me. She was not taken by me. She came to this house to teach our children and stayed when blood came to our doors. She fed the hungry, guarded the frightened, buried our dead with us, and stood between our young and our enemies. Grace wiped at her cheek and pretended she had not. My voice roughened. My wolf knew her before I was brave enough to admit it. My heart chose her after. If she accepts me, I will present her as my mate before Vanguard Pack. Silence held. I turned back to Alma. The moon rested on her face. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. Do you accept? I asked. She looked at the pack, at the children pressed close to Sophie, at Daniel, at Grace, then finally at me. Yes, she said. And if anyone calls me Luna before breakfast tomorrow, I expect them to help with inventory. A laugh broke through the crowd, soft and relieved. Then Anna whispered loudly, Luna Alma. Alma closed her eyes. The whole courtyard smiled. I did not. I could not. There was too much in my chest. Daniel bowed his head first. Then Grace. Then Sophie. One by one, Vanguard bent before the woman they had already begun to follow. Alma's hand trembled at her side. This time, I asked without words. She gave the smallest nod. I took her hand. The private rite happened in my room. No witnesses, no chanting, no pack eyes, just moonlight through the open balcony doors, the scent of rain-washed stone, and Alma standing before me with her hand in mine. You can still stop, I said. She exhaled through her nose. If you ask me that every 6 minutes, I am going to start throwing things. I will endure it. I know you will. That is the problem. My mouth curved despite the storm inside me. She stepped closer and placed my hand against her waist. Tell me what I need to know. The bite will hurt. I assumed teeth were involved. It may feel like more than pain. The bond will open. You may feel me clearly, not thoughts, emotions, instincts, things I would hide if I could. Her eyes searched mine. Will you feel me? Yes. Good. That single word nearly unmanned me. Alma? No. She touched my face. Do not turn this into another chance to protect me from knowledge. I am choosing you with my eyes open. My wolf went still. She guided the fabric from her shoulder herself. I stared at the place where my mark would live. Mine, the wolf breathed. Hers, I answered. I bent and kissed her shoulder first. Once, twice. A vow in silence. She shivered but did not pull away. "Ethan," she whispered. I lifted my head. "Last time, do you want the mark?" Her hands closed around my arms. "Yes." I bit down. Her gasp tore through me. Blood touched my tongue, hot and sacred beneath moonlight. The bond did not flare this time. It opened. Alma flooded into me. Not thoughts, never that simple. Courage first, bright and stubborn. Then pain, sharp but endured. Then trust so fierce it brought me to my knees, inside my own skin. Beneath it all was warmth, her warmth. The part of her that sang to children after nightmares and argued with old wolves over supply records and still dreamed of a porch somewhere in Kentucky. Then she felt me. I knew the moment it happened. Her hands tightened. Her breath shook. "Oh," she whispered. I sealed the mark with my mouth and drew back before instinct could make me linger. Her eyes were wide, not frightened, wounded by understanding. "You are afraid all the time," she said. I closed my eyes. "Not all the time. Ethan." The bond made lying useless. I rested my forehead against hers. "Since you arrived." "For me. For losing you." Her fingers slid into my hair. "And that other thing." I tried to pull back. She did not let me. Her voice softened. "That ache, that warmth, that enormous foolish thing you've been carrying around like it is a crime." My chest tightened until breathing hurt. "Love," I said. Her eyes filled then. "You could have told me." I was afraid it would sound like another demand. It does not. The pack began howling outside. One voice at first, then many. A sound of recognition, acceptance, grief turning slowly toward life. Alma touched the mark on her shoulder and shivered. Through the bond came her wonder. Then, suddenly, fear. Not hers, not mine. Thin, cold, distant. A child's terror. Alma stiffened in my arms. I felt my wolf rise before I heard anything at all. "What is it?" I asked. She turned toward the open balcony doors, eyes fixed on the dark woods beyond Vanguard's wall. "That fear," she whispered. "It is not yours." The howling outside died all at once. From the northern forest, beyond our border, a small scream split the night. Alma's hand closed over mine. "Ethan," she said, voice shaking with certainty. "There's a child out there." The scream cut through the night like a blade. For one heartbeat, I stood with Alma in my arms. The taste of her blood still on my tongue and the bond wide open between us. The pack's howls died beyond the balcony. Every wolf on Vanguard land went silent at once. Alma's fingers tightened around my wrist. "That way?" she whispered. I followed her gaze past the open doors, past the moonlit courtyard, toward the black rise of the northern woods. No Vanguard child should have been there. No human woman should have felt them. Both truths struck me at the same time. I reached for the robe hanging over the chair and drew it carefully around Alma's shoulders, covering the fresh mark at the curve of her neck. Her skin was warm beneath my hand. The bite was still tender. The bond still pulsed raw and new, carrying the edges of her fear into my chest. Not fear for herself, never first. For the child. "Stay here," I began. She looked at me. I stopped. The old command died before it fully formed. Alma's face was composed, but her eyes burned with quiet fury. "You may ask me to be careful, Ethan. Do not ask me to ignore a child screaming in the woods." My wolf pressed hard against my ribs. I wanted to carry her back to the bed, lock every door between her and the world, and tear apart anything that came within reach of her scent. Instead, I nodded once. "Shoes," I said. "A coat. Stay behind me." That sounded almost reasonable. It was struggle. She moved quickly, though I felt the soreness in her through the bond. A faint ache, hidden under determination. She would not admit to it unless pressed, and tonight was not the night to press her. I dressed with hands that wanted claws. By the time we reached the corridor, Daniel was already running toward us, shirt half-buttoned, blade in hand. "You heard it?" he asked. All of Vanguard heard it. Sophie appeared behind him, hair loose around her face. "The children inside are accounted for. Grace is checking the cellar." Alma exhaled, but her hand remained closed around mine. Daniel's eyes lowered briefly to our joined fingers, then to the covered mark at Alma's shoulder. Something like pride moved across his face before discipline returned. "North border," I said. 5 fighters with me. No one kills unless I order it." Daniel's expression hardened. "Ironclaw? I don't know. But I did." Even before the patrol gathered at the courtyard gate, the wind shifted and brought the scent to us. Mud, smoke, old blood, Ironclaw. Several Vanguard wolves growled low in their throats. One of them, Mason, still had his brother's blood dried beneath his nails from the burial that morning. Alma heard the sound and stepped closer to my side. Not behind me. Beside me. I looked down at her. She lifted her chin. "I am not the one you need to worry about biting." Despite the darkness in my chest, something warm stirred. Daniel muttered, "God help us all." We moved through the gate under the full moon. 2 wolves ranged ahead, silent between the trees. Daniel walked to my right. Mason and the others spread out behind us. Alma stayed close enough that I could feel the brush of her sleeve against my hand, but she did not reach for me again. She was listening, not with wolf ears, not with any sense I understood. Her gaze kept shifting deeper into the woods, as if some invisible thread tugged her forward. "What do you feel?" I asked quietly. Her brows drew together. "Cold, hunger." She swallowed. A child trying not to cry because crying makes someone angry. Daniel looked sharply at me. I gave him nothing back. My heart had become a slow, heavy thing. The border lay just beyond a shallow ravine where old maples leaned over a creek bed. The land there belonged to no one officially, a strip too narrow to defend and too tangled to claim. We found the first sign under a broken pine, a scrap of cloth, then a small footprint pressed into mud. Then the smell of fear became so thick even Alma drew a breath and stopped. A child snarled from the shadows. Mason's blade came up. "Down," I ordered. The command struck hard enough that every Vanguard fighter obeyed before thinking. A boy stepped from behind the fallen pine, thin as a winter branch, holding a rusted knife with both hands. He could not have been more than 12. His hair hung in dirty strips over his eyes. Blood crusted at his temple, and one sleeve was torn away, showing bruises along his arm in the shape of fingers. Behind him, something shifted. No, someone. Alma made a small sound. There were 6 of them huddled in the hollow beneath the pine roots. A little girl with tangled dark hair and one shoe. A feverish boy wrapped in a coat too large for him. 2 younger children pressed together so tightly they seemed to share one breath. A toddler asleep or unconscious in lap of another girl who looked old enough to have stopped being a child only because no one had allowed her to remain one. Ironclaw pups, starving, filthy, terrified. The boy raised the knife higher. His hand shook. "Stay back," he rasped. "We ain't going with him." Alma took one step forward. Every wolf near me tensed. I caught her wrist gently. "Alma." She did not pull away. She looked at the children, then at the boy's knife, then back at me. "They're children," she said. 2 words. Not soft, not pleading. A line drawn in the dirt. I released her. She crouched slowly, though the movement made pain flicker through the bond. "My name is Alma." The boy's eyes darted to me. "You're his woman." "I am my own woman." Her voice stayed calm. "And right now, I'm asking whether any of you are hurt too badly to walk." The smallest girl began to cry without sound. The older boy's face twisted. "Alpha Reeves said if Vanguard found us, you'd slit us open for what our fathers did." Mason made a broken noise behind me. "My brother died with iron claw steel in him," he said. Alma turned her head. The moon caught the warm brown of her face, the steadiness in her eyes. "Did that child hold the blade?" Mason looked away first. Daniel stepped beside him, not touching, but close enough to steady him if grief turned into rage. The boy with the knife stared at Alma as if she had spoken a language he had forgotten. I stepped forward then, slow enough not to startle them. His knife swung towards me. I let him hold it there. "I am Ethan Woods," I said, "Alpha of Vanguard. No child will be harmed under my order." The boy's lips trembled, but he clenched his jaw hard enough to stop it. "Orders change." "Mine do not." "Malcolm left us," the older girl whispered from beneath the tree. Her voice was flat in the way voices become when tears have already been used up. "Said we slowed him down. Said pups with dead parents were dead weight." Alma closed her eyes for half a second. Through the bond came her grief, hot and immediate. Then anger, so fierce my wolf lowered its head in recognition. She opened her eyes and held out her hand to the boy. "You can keep the knife until you feel safe. But your little ones need food, warmth, and a doctor. We have all 3. "We barely have all 3, Mason muttered. I turned. The forest went still. Mason swallowed, but he did not back down. "Alpha, we just buried 4 of ours. Stores are thin. The wall is broken. Council summons came tonight. If this is bait, then we bring them home and close the trap around them," I said. His mouth shut. I looked at every fighter with me. Any objection to feeding starving children can be brought to me after they are warm. No one spoke. Alma's gaze found mine. The bond carried her gratitude before her mouth shaped it. I did not deserve it, but I let it reach me anyway. The boy with the knife lowered it by an inch. Not trust, exhaustion. It was enough. Grace met us at the kitchen entrance with blankets already in her arms. Of course she did. She took one look at the children and shouted over her shoulder, "Nathan, bring your bag. Sophie, clear the east sitting room. Daniel, if any fool starts trouble, sit on them." Daniel sighed. "Why is that always my task?" "Because you're broad and mostly sensible." The Ironclaw children flinched at the noise, but they did not run. Alma walked among them like a lantern carried through a ruined house. Slow, warm, unafraid of the broken places. The little girl with one shoe clung to Alma's skirt and refused to release it. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Alma asked. The child stared at the bowl of soup Grace had placed on the table. The older boy answered for her. "Mara." "Mara," Alma said softly. "You need to eat." Mara shook her head. Grace crouched, holding out bread. "Ain't poisoned, baby." Mara's eyes filled. She pressed harder against Alma. Alma understood before any of us did. She sat on the floor beside the child, heedless of her dress, the cold stone, and the fresh mark at her shoulder. "I'll eat first," Alma said. She tore a piece of bread, dipped it into the soup, and took a bite. Mara watched her chew. Then, with both hands, the child took the spoon. The room seemed to breathe again. I stood in the doorway, unable to move. This was what the council would never understand. They would weigh bloodlines, marks, laws, and the risks of a human Luna. They would ask whether Alma had strength. They would never think to look here, at a woman sitting on a kitchen floor after a claiming moon, feeding the enemy's abandoned child from her own bowl. Daniel came to stand beside me. She just made the choice for the pack. "No," I said. She reminded us what the choice was. He glanced at me. "And if the pack resents it?" I watched Mara lean against Alma's side, too tired to fear her. "Then they will answer to me." It was near dawn before the last child slept. Dr. Brooks treated fever, bruises, infected cuts, and old injuries he did not describe in front of them. Sophie found spare clothes. Grace cried once in the pantry and threatened me with death if I mentioned it. Alma lasted until we reached my room. Then her shoulders dropped. I closed the door and turned the lock, waiting for her to tell me if she wanted it undone. She did not. Instead, she leaned back against the wood and looked at me. "You are angry," she said. "Yes." "At me?" "No." "At yourself?" I said nothing. Her mouth curved without humor. "Ethan." The bond made silence feel like confession. I crossed to her and stopped close enough to touch, but did not. I should have killed Malcolm when I had the chance. You chose the children. He escaped because of it. The children lived because of it. I lowered my head. Her hands came to my face, gentle and certain. Do not turn mercy into failure, because cruelty ran faster. Something inside me cracked. I kissed her palm first, then her wrist, then, when she drew me down, her mouth. The kiss was not careful for long. There was too much night in us, too much blood, fear, relief. Her body pressed against mine, warm and alive, and my hands found her waist with a hunger that still stopped to ask. "Tell me if you hurt," I murmured. "I will. If you want sleep, I want you." My dick hardened at the sound of it, blunt and immediate, and she felt the change against her before I could step back. Instead of shrinking from it, Alma slid her arms around my neck and kissed me deeper, with a confidence that sent heat straight through the bond. This was not discovery like the first night. This was return. I carried her to the bed slowly, giving her time, giving us both breath. She laughed once when I nearly tripped over the rug, and the sound saved me from drowning in my own need. I kissed the claiming mark only after she nodded. I touched her like something precious, not fragile. She touched me like she knew exactly where I was strong and where I was not. When we came together, it was quieter than before. No less fierce, only steadier, a homeward thing. Afterward, she lay against my chest, fingers tracing one of the old scars beneath my ribs. "Your heart is loud," she whispered. "It has opinions about you." That sounds serious. It is. Her smile brushed my skin. A knock came at the door. I was out of bed before the second one, trousers in hand, every soft thing in me gone sharp. Daniel's voice sounded from the corridor. "Ethan, Alma, the oldest Ironclaw boy is awake. He says he'll only speak to her." Alma sat up, drawing the sheet over herself. "What's wrong?" Daniel hesitated. That hesitation chilled the room. I opened the door. Daniel's face was grim. Behind him, half hidden in the corridor, stood the boy with the rusted knife. He looked smaller without it. His eyes went past me to Alma. "Malcolm ain't dead," he whispered. "I know," I said. The boy shook his head hard. "No, you don't know what he's after." Alma rose slowly from the bed. The child swallowed, staring at her as if she were something from a story he'd been warned never to speak aloud. "He knows about your blood," the boy said. "He said Wells women were never just human."
The boy's words hung in Ethan's bedroom like smoke after a fire. For a moment, no one moved. Daniel stood in the doorway with one hand on the frame, his expression carved into something grim. Ethan was beside the bed, bare-chested and tense, every scar on him catching the low lamplight. I had the sheet pulled up under my arms, but I forgot to be embarrassed. The boy in the hall looked too thin to carry a secret that large. I swallowed. "What does that mean?" The boy's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to me. "I don't know." Ethan's voice dropped. "Tell us exactly what Malcolm said." The child flinched at the sound of Malcolm's name, and that small movement did more to steady me than anything else could have. He was not a spy in that doorway. He was a hungry boy with bruises on his arms and terror tucked under his ribs. "What's your name?" I asked him. His mouth tightened. For a second I thought he would refuse. "Caleb." "All right, Caleb." I kept my voice low. "No one is going to hurt you for telling the truth." He stared at me as if he had heard that sentence before from people who meant the opposite. I climbed from the bed and reached for Ethan's robe. Ethan moved before I did, holding it open without touching me. I slid my arms into the sleeves and tied it closed myself. Only then did I cross the room. Ethan stayed close. Not in front of me. Close. Caleb watched that too. "He was bleeding," Caleb said, "after the fight. Men carried him. He kept talking like he didn't know we could hear. Said the Woods Alpha had woken because of you." His gaze dropped to my shoulder, where the claiming mark was hidden under the robe. "Said your blood would wake other things." "What other things?" Daniel asked. Caleb shook his head. "Old things. He said the council wouldn't understand until it was too late. Said Wells women were kept out of pack records on purpose." A chill moved over my skin. "Did he say my grandmother's name?" I asked. Caleb hesitated. Ethan went very still beside me. "No," Caleb said at last. "Just Kentucky. He had papers, old ones, names written down." His voice became smaller. He laughed when he said you probably thought you were human. The room narrowed around me. For 24 years I had been Alma Wells from rural Kentucky, Eleanor's granddaughter, a teacher, a woman who could make biscuit dough, manage a room of children, and stretch $6 farther than any sane person should. I knew my own history in porch stories, church records, recipes, and the worn Bible my grandmother kept wrapped in cloth. Now a dead-eyed alpha with blood on his teeth had decided my name belonged to him. I did not like it. Not one damn bit. I looked at Caleb. "Thank you for telling me." He blinked, startled by gratitude. Ethan spoke to Daniel without looking away from the boy. "Put 2 guards on the east sitting room. Quiet ones. No one questions the children without Alma or me present." Daniel nodded. Caleb stepped back into the hall, but before he disappeared, he looked at me again. "He said he'd come back." My fingers curled inside the robe. Ethan answered for me. "Let him try." I called my grandmother at dawn. The phone in Ethan's study felt absurdly small in my hand. The room smelled of old paper, cold ash, and him. Shelves climbed the walls. Rain tapped softly at the window. Ethan stood near the desk with his arms crossed, pretending not to hover. He was terrible at pretending. The line rang 4 times. Then Eleanor Wells answered with the voice of a woman who could scold the devil into wiping his feet. "Somebody better be dead, dying, or bringing me good news at this ungodly hour." My throat closed so fast I had to press my fingers against my mouth. "Grandma?" Silence. Then all the sleep left her voice.
Alma? I'm all right, I said quickly. That is not how all right sounds. I shut my eyes. Ethan's worry brushed through the bond, warm and restrained. He did not reach for me. He let me stand. Grandma, I said, did Mama ever tell you stories about wolves? Another silence came. Not confused. Careful. My stomach tightened. What kind of wolves? She asked. The kind that are not just wolves. Ethan unfolded from the wall. I watched him hear the change in Eleanor's voice from across the room. Alma Wells, she said slowly. Where are you? In Ohio. I know that. I sent you there, didn't I? I mean, where are you, really? Tears burned behind my eyes. I don't know how to explain over the phone. Try. I almost did. I almost told her about Ethan, about the pack, about the children and the blood and the mark beneath my robe. I almost told her that her granddaughter had walked into a world full of teeth and somehow found a home there. But Eleanor was alone in Kentucky, and Malcolm Reeves was alive. So I swallowed the truth until it hurt. I need to come home, I said. Her breath softened. Then come. I can't leave today. Then come when you can. And Alma? Yes, ma'am? Do not let anyone tell you your blood belongs to them. I do not care what old story they drag out of the dirt. The tears slipped then. Ethan saw them and took one step forward before stopping himself. I loved him for both things. I'll call again, I whispered. You do that. And bring whatever trouble you've collected with you. I'd rather look it in the eye. When the line went dead, I kept the receiver pressed to my ear. Ethan waited until I set it down. She knows something, he said. Yes. What? I wiped my cheeks with the heel of my hand. Apparently more than I do. His jaw tightened. I knew that look now. He was already imagining riders to Kentucky, guards hidden in trees, Daniel with maps, Sophie with lists, Grace with enough food to survive winter. No, I said. He blinked. I did not say anything. You were thinking loudly. The bond warmed with a trace of guilt. I pointed at him. My grandmother is not a cargo to be fetched, because men are being dramatic. I was thinking of sending protection. Quietly? His silence answered. Ethan. I know. You cannot put wolves in her garden without asking. His mouth moved like the words physically pained him. I know. I should have been too tired for humor, but it crept in anyway. Look at you. Growing. He came closer then, slowly. Do not tease me when you are crying. I will tease you whenever I please. His thumb hovered near my cheek. May I? I nodded. He wiped the last tear away with such care that the ache in my chest changed shape. Not smaller, just softer. I need 1 minute, I whispered, where my blood is not a battlefield. His eyes darkened. Tell me what you need. I put my hand over his heart. You. The word changed him. Not all at once. Ethan never unraveled carelessly, but the restraint in him loosened by one deliberate thread. He bent his head, waiting until I rose on my toes and met him halfway. The kiss began gently. It did not stay there. His mouth warmed mine in slow, deep strokes, and the bond between us hummed like a struck string. I felt the hunger he held back. Felt the reverence, too, which somehow undid me more thoroughly than the heat. His hand settled at my waist over the robe, firm but patient. I tugged at the knot. He drew back a fraction. Alma, if you ask whether I'm sure, I will bite you. His breath left him in a rough laugh. That is supposed to be my line. Then do not waste it. I untied the robe myself and let it fall open. The room seemed to still around us. Ethan looked at me as if the sight of my brown skin in the gray morning had become a prayer he did not know how to speak. His gaze moved to the mark on my shoulder. Not possessive first, tender first. Does it hurt? He asked. A little. Then I won't touch it. I caught his wrist and placed his hand just beneath the mark. You can touch me. I will tell you where. His eyes lifted to mine. There it was again. That awe of his, that enormous, foolish thing he carried like love, was a weapon he might mishandle. I kissed him harder because I did not know what else to do with it. He lifted me onto the edge of the desk with one arm, sweeping papers aside with the other. Ink bottles rattled. A book hit the carpet. Somewhere in me, the teacher protested the treatment of records. The woman won. Ethan stepped between my knees and I felt him hard against me, unmistakable and human beneath all that alpha control. A dick was a dick, even attached to a man determined to make restraint into a religion. I smiled against his mouth. He noticed. What? You're very serious for a man ruining his own desk. I have wanted you on this desk since the first week, my breath caught. Oh, yes, he said, voice low. Oh. Heat moved through me, sweet and insistent. I slid my hands over his shoulders, tracing scar and muscle, learning again what was mine to touch, because he had offered it and I had chosen it. He kissed my throat, my collarbone, the safe skin below the mark. Every place his mouth landed felt like a question answered by my fingers in his hair. We took our time. Not because desire was small, but because it was large enough to deserve patience. He undressed me with my help, pausing whenever my breath changed, watching my face more than my body. I unfastened what little he wore with less grace and more determination, and he groaned when my hand closed around him. The sound rolled through me, dark and satisfying. That, I whispered, I like. His forehead dropped to mine. You are going to kill me. No, I have plans for you. He laughed once, then kissed me until laughter became something else. When he entered me, he did it slowly, with one hand braced on the desk and the other spread warm against my back. I held him there, breathing through the stretch, through the memory of soreness, through the deep pulse of want that followed. His control trembled. I felt it in his arm, in the bond, in the way he whispered my name like a warning and a blessing. I moved first. His eyes shut. That was worth every careful inch of courage I possessed. The world narrowed to breath, skin, the scrape of wood beneath my thighs, the rain at the window, Ethan's voice rough at my ear. There was nothing rushed in it, nothing taken. We built the heat together until it rose too high to name, until my hands clutched at him and his restraint finally broke in a way that still held me safe. Afterward, he gathered me against his chest, both of us breathing hard among scattered papers and ruined dignity. I pressed my smile to his shoulder. You will need a new filing system. I will burn the desk. You will not. I might. You are dramatic. His hand stroked down my spine. You started it. I did, I said, and felt no shame at all. By mid-morning, I was back in the schoolroom. That was foolish. I knew it the moment I picked up the chalk and the letters on the board swam sideways, but the children needed ordinary things. Spelling words, trish, clean slates. Someone tell Peter that no, drawing swords on his arithmetic did not make the answer more correct. Mara sat close to my desk with a biscuit hidden in her pocket, watching me like she expected me to disappear if she blinked too long. I made it through reading, almost through sums. Then the floor tipped. I gripped the edge of the desk. Anna's voice sharpened. Miss Alma? I'm fine, I said automatically. Mara stood so fast her chair scraped. No, you ain't. The room blurred at the edges. Sophie appeared in the doorway as if summoned by trouble itself. Alma? I tried to wave her off. My knees disagreed. The next thing I knew, Ethan was there. He did not burst into roaring, though I felt the roar in him. He crossed the room with terrible calm and knelt in front of my chair. Alma, he said, look at me. I am looking at you. You are looking at my left ear. It is a fine ear.
Sophie made a sound between a laugh and panic. "Doctor." Brooks arrived with his bag and the expression of a man who had expected this day to be difficult but not interesting. Interesting, I was learning, was rarely good. He checked my pulse, my eyes, my breathing. Asked about dizziness, nausea, pain, bleeding. Ethan stayed beside me, silent and rigid, until I touched his sleeve. "Stop standing like a cemetery angel," I muttered. He crouched lower. Dr. Brooks paused with 2 fingers against my wrist. Then he looked at Ethan. Something passed between them. My stomach dropped. "Nathan." The doctor turned back to me gently. "Alma, when was your last monthly bleeding?" The room went silent. Sophie's eyes widened. Ethan did not move at all. I answered because embarrassment had no place in a room full of wolves, who had apparently felt my bedroom business across an estate. "Before I came to Vanguard." Dr. Brooks took a slow breath. "That does not necessarily mean," I started. "No," he said, "but this does." He placed his hand lightly over mine. Not trapping, simply steadying. "Your scent has changed. So has your pulse. With a claimed alpha bond, some signs appear much earlier than they would in an ordinary human pregnancy. Pregnancy." The word did not enter me all at once. It stood across the room first, unfamiliar and enormous. Then it came closer. Then it sat down inside my chest. I looked at Ethan. His face had gone still in a way that would have frightened me weeks ago. Now, through the bond, I felt what lived beneath it. Joy. Raw and stunned. Then fear, fierce enough to drown it. And under both, restraint. He did not smile. Did not claim happiness before I had found mine. Instead, Ethan Woods knelt before me in the schoolroom, with children whispering beyond the door, and a future opening under our feet. "What do you want?" he asked. That broke me. Not the news, not the fear, the question. I covered my mouth, and the first sob came out crooked. Sophie turned away, wiping at her eyes. Dr. Brooks busied himself with his bag, as if we had all lost interest in him. Ethan waited. I pressed my hand low against my stomach. There was nothing to feel. No curve, no flutter. Just my own warmth and the impossible idea of a child who had arrived before I was ready, and somehow exactly where all my old dreams had been waiting. "I want the baby," I said. Ethan's breath shook. "I want you." My voice trembled, but it did not break. "I want Vanguard. I want this ridiculous, wounded, beautiful house, and every child in it who thinks pockets are for biscuits." A tear slipped down his face before he could stop it. I touched it with my thumb. "But I need my grandmother," I whispered. "I promised her I would come home." Ethan covered my hand with his, careful over my stomach, though there was no need yet. "Then I'll go with you," he said. Through the bond came a sudden, sharp burst of fear. Not council fear. Not Malcolm fear. Something older and far more humiliating. I stared at him. The alpha of Vanguard. The man who had torn through Ironclaw fighters under a full moon was absolutely terrified of meeting Alma Wells. A laugh broke through my tears. "Oh, Ethan," I whispered. His jaw tightened. "What?" I smiled, still crying, and held his hand against me. "We're going to Kentucky." I had imagined leaving for Kentucky quietly. 1 suitcase, 1 car. Ethan beside me, too large for the passenger seat and too nervous to admit it. Maybe Daniel following at a distance if Ethan insisted on making security everybody's business. That was the plan. By 8 in the morning there were 3 vehicles in the courtyard. Grace had packed enough food to survive a siege. Sophie was arguing with Daniel about seating arrangements, and Anna had crawled into the back of the second car with a blanket, 2 apples, and absolutely no permission. "Anna," I said, standing beside the open door. She blinked up at me from beneath the blanket, as if surprised to be discovered. "Yes, Luna Alma?" "Do not Luna Alma me when you are hiding." I wasn't hiding. She hugged the apples to her chest. I was waiting secretly. Behind me, Sophie coughed into her hand. Ethan stood near the front steps with his arms folded, looking like a man trying to calculate how a simple trip had turned into a campaign movement. He had dressed carefully in a dark coat and clean shirt, his hair combed back, his beard trimmed close. It should have made him look less dangerous. It did not. It only made him look like danger with manners. Grace came out of the kitchen carrying another covered basket. I stared at it. Grace? What? How many people do you think live in Kentucky? Enough to appreciate pie. She shoved the basket at Daniel. Don't tilt that. There's chicken under the cloth and biscuits wrapped in the blue towel. Daniel accepted it with the tired resignation of a man who had lost this battle before breakfast. We are driving for hours, not crossing the wilderness. Grace pointed a finger at him. That is how underfed people talk. Sophie leaned close to me. I told you we should have left before dawn. You told me while packing your own bag. I am coming for moral support. For whom? She looked toward Ethan, who was watching Anna climb out of the vehicle with the grim focus of a general observing troop movement. For everyone, Sophie said. I rubbed a hand over my forehead. The movement made the new mark at my shoulder pull gently beneath my collar. Ethan's attention snapped to me at once. Through the bond came concern, immediate and warm. I looked at him. I am not fainting. I am annoyed. There is a difference. I know. You were preparing to carry me inside. I considered it. Do not consider it where I can feel you considering it. His mouth twitched, but he wisely said nothing. The pregnancy was still too new to fit inside me properly. Not physically. There was nothing to see yet. Nothing for my hands to hold except the flat warmth beneath my dress. But the knowledge had settled into every ordinary task and changed its weight. Buttoning my coat, drinking tea, watching Ethan's gaze drop, almost helplessly, whenever my palm rested against my stomach. He had not celebrated loudly. He had not announced anything to the pack. He had asked me what I wanted, and then built the morning around my answer. I wanted my grandmother. Apparently, half of Vanguard wanted her too. Mara stood near the rear wheel of the first car, one hand twisted in the hem of her borrowed sweater. She had been with us less than 2 days, and still moved like someone expecting hands to grab her from behind. When I looked at her, she lowered her eyes. I crouched carefully. Ethan shifted as if he might help, then stopped himself. Mara, I said, did you want to come? She shrugged. That meant yes. Do you know where we're going? To your grandma. That's right. She is kind, but she asks a lot of questions. Mara glanced at Ethan. More than him? Much more. Ethan's fear flickered through the bond so sharply I nearly laughed. Mara seemed to consider this. Does she hit? My chest tightened. No, baby, I said softly. She does not hit children. Mara's hand loosened from her sweater. Not all the way, but enough. Ethan came to stand beside me. If she comes, she stays with you or Sophie the entire time. I looked up at him. Was that you agreeing? That was me losing. Beautifully done. His eyes softened in that quiet way that made my breath catch. You are pleased too easily. With men? No. I rose, and this time he offered his hand without making a production of it. I took it. With you? Occasionally. Daniel walked past with 2 more bags. If we are bringing children, we need clear rules. I have rules, Grace said from the steps. Don't bite anybody. Don't track mud into Mrs. Wells's house. And if she offers you food, say thank you even if it's liver. Anna wrinkled her nose. What if it is liver? Then you say thank you with extra manners. Ethan's voice cut through the courtyard, calm but final. 3 children only. A blanket in the third vehicle sneezed. Everyone turned. Peter's head appeared from beneath it, followed by Isaac's guilty face. Ethan closed his eyes. I pressed my lips together. Daniel muttered, "This is what happens when you educate them. They learn strategy." In the end, 3 became 5, because Peter cried when Isaac was removed, and Mara would not come without the little girl from Ironclaw, who still refused to answer to anything except Bertie. Anna claimed she was necessary because she had experience with grandma feelings, whatever that meant. I told Ethan no one was turning my trip home into a dick-measuring parade of armed vehicles. He stared at me. Sophie made a choking sound. Grace said, "Good. Somebody needed to say it." So we compromised. 2 cars, 1 truck. Daniel driving the second vehicle. 2 quiet guards in the truck with supplies, and Mason staying behind to hold vanguard with Dr. Brooks. Ethan checked every latch, every tire, every tree line beyond the wall before allowing me into the front seat. I let him. Not because I needed guarding from the door handle, but because his fear was trying very hard to become useful. Before he closed my door, he leaned down. "If you feel dizzy, sick, tired, or anything unusual, I will tell you. If you need to stop, I will tell you. If, Ethan." He stopped. I reached up and straightened his collar, though it had been straight already. "You fought an alpha twice your size." His gaze flicked toward the children, then back to me. "Your grandmother raised you. That makes her more dangerous." A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Anna popped her head between the seats from the back. "Is Grandma Wells dangerous?" Sophie answered from beside her. "Only to foolish men." Daniel's voice crackled through the small radios Ethan had insisted on bringing. "Then Ethan is doomed." For the first time all morning, Ethan smiled. Only a little, but I felt the warmth of it all the way through the bond. The estate disappeared behind us slowly. Stone walls gave way to trees. Trees gave way to narrow roads and low gray sky. Vanguard sat in my chest like a second heartbeat, full of children and danger and unfinished work. Leaving it, even for a little while, felt like stepping away from a sleeping child. Ethan drove with both hands on the wheel, too carefully. I watched his thumb tap once against the leather, then still. The bond carried the restless sweep of his attention. Road, mirror, tree line, me, children, road again. "You are going to wear holes in the air," I said. "I am driving." "You are hunting while seated." Sophie laughed from the back. Ethan glanced at me. "You say that as if it is unreasonable. We are on a highway. Attacks can happen on highways. Not if the attacker sees Grace's food supply and assumes we are already an occupying force." That earned me another almost smile. The children were quiet at first, heavy with the strange exhaustion that followed fear. Mara sat behind Ethan, one hand resting on the paper bag Grace had packed for her personally. Bertie slept with her cheek against Sophie's sleeve. Anna watched the world go by with solemn interest, as if Kentucky might appear suddenly and need greeting. After the first hour, questions began. "Does your grandma have wolves?" Peter asked over the radio from Daniel's car. "No," I answered. "Chickens?" "She used to." "Does she have a gun?" Ethan's fingers tightened around the wheel. I looked out the window to hide my smile. "Probably." "Alma." "What?" "It's Kentucky." Sophie leaned forward. "Does she know we're coming?" "She knows I am." "That is not the same thing." "No," I admitted. "It is not." That truth stayed with me after the laughter faded. My grandmother knew something. I had heard it in the long silence over the telephone, in the careful way she had asked what kind of wolves. Not disbelief, not confusion, recognition. The old question Caleb had brought to our door rode with me through every mile. Wells women were never just human. I touched my stomach before I meant to. Ethan noticed. His fear softened into something more tender. "Are you hurting?" "No." "Nauseous?" "No." "Hungry?" Grace fed me 3 times before we reached the gate. She said pregnant women require options. Grace thinks everyone requires options if those options are wrapped in pastry. He took one hand from the wheel and offered it palm up between us. I slid my fingers into his. His hand was warm, scarred, steady. The mark at my shoulder hummed in answer, a quiet thread tying my pulse to his. There was heat there too, banked but alive. It rose whenever his thumb moved over my knuckles, whenever I remembered his body over mine, the desk beneath me, the way his restraint had finally cracked without ever making me feel unsafe. I glanced at him. He kept his eyes on the road, but his jaw flexed. "You heard that?" I murmured. I felt enough. Sophie groaned from the back. "I am begging both of you to remember, there are children present, and one adult with excellent hearing." Anna frowned. "What happened?" "Nothing," Sophie said quickly. Ethan's ears went red. I smiled all the way to the state line. We stopped once for fuel and Grace's idea of a light lunch, which involved fried chicken, boiled eggs, apples, cornbread, jam, and a cake she claimed was just in case. A man near the pumps stared too long. I knew the kind of stare, not open hatred, not kindness either, just that assessing look some people gave when they saw a black woman with a white man built like a threat and a collection of children who did not match neatly enough for their comfort. Ethan felt my irritation before I spoke. His head turned. I touched his arm. No growling. He is staring. People do. I don't like it. Neither do I. I kept my voice even. But if I fought every fool with eyes, I would never get anywhere. His gaze came back to me, and the anger in him changed. Not less, exactly. Deeper. Sadder. "I cannot protect you from a world I do not understand," he said quietly. "No," I said. "But you can stand beside me in it." He looked down at my hand on his sleeve. Then he nodded once. No grand promise, no alpha declaration, just understanding settling where arrogance might have been. That mattered more. By late afternoon, the hills began to rise, familiar around us. My breath changed before I recognized the road. The land rolled soft and green despite the cold. Fences leaned along the fields. Bare branches reached over ditches full of brown leaves. A church sign I had read 100 times stood at the bend, its white paint weathered but stubborn. Farther on, the creek flashed silver through the trees. Home did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces. The old feed store with one broken shutter, the red mailbox at the end of the county road, the neighbor's pasture where cows lifted their heads as we passed, the long gravel drive that rattled beneath the tires and made Anna gasp as if we had entered a secret kingdom. Then I saw the house, small, white, needing paint around the porch rails. The kitchen curtains were still yellow. The rocking chair sat in its usual place, angled toward the fields, as if my grandmother had only stepped inside for a glass of tea. My throat tightened. I had left here with one suitcase and a promise to come back. Now I returned with an alpha, a beta, my best friend, a cook with enough food to feed the county, 5 children, guards in a truck, a bite mark on my shoulder, and a baby beneath my heart. Ethan parked but did not move. Through the bond came a sudden spike of nerves so sharp I turned to him. "Breathe," I said. "I am breathing. You are preparing for execution. That may also involve breathing." I laughed softly, but tears blurred the house in front of me. His hand found mine. "Regrets?" "No." I looked at the porch, at the door, at the life that had made me before Vanguard found me. Maybe grief for the woman who thought everything would happen in a straight line. Was she wrong? I rested my hand over my stomach. Not entirely. She wanted a home, a good man, children. I looked back at him. She was just small-minded about the scale. His expression changed, and for one quiet second the whole world narrowed to his eyes. Then Grace opened her car door behind us and ruined the moment by saying, "Everybody wipe your feet before you step on that woman's porch." We climbed out. The children gathered close. Daniel stood beside the second car, looking amused and alert. Sophie squeezed my hand as she passed. Ethan came to my side, shoulders squared like he was about to face the council itself. "You can still wait in the car," I whispered.
I do not run. Not from alphas. Grandmothers are different. He gave me a look. The front door opened before I reached the first step. My grandmother stood there in her house dress, silver hair braided back, brown face lined by years of sun, work, laughter, and worry. She looked at me first, and everything in me nearly broke. Then her gaze moved to Ethan. Then Daniel. Then Grace holding 2 baskets. Then Sophie. Then the children peeking from behind the cars. Last, her eyes dropped to my hand resting protectively over my stomach. Eleanor Wells put one hand on the doorframe and lifted her brows. Alma Wells, she said, did you go to Ohio for a teaching job or to collect a whole damn family? For one blessed second, nobody spoke. Then Grace looked at my grandmother, lifted both baskets in her hands and said, Ma'am, I brought pie. Eleanor Wells stared at her. Grace stared back. Then my grandmother stepped aside and opened the door wider. Well, don't stand out there letting flies in. Bring the pie and the family with it. That was how Vanguard entered the house I had grown up in. Not quietly, not neatly, not with any dignity worth writing down. Children spilled over the threshold in shy little clusters. Sophie carried Bertie on her hip. Daniel ducked his head to avoid the porch light and still nearly knocked into it. Grace went straight to the kitchen like she had been born knowing where every cupboard belonged. And Ethan Woods, alpha of Vanguard, a man who had faced Malcolm Reeves under a full moon, hesitated on my grandmother's porch like the boards might open beneath him. I touched his sleeve. Come on. His eyes stayed on Eleanor. She has not invited me. I invited everybody, Grandma said. That includes the large nervous one. Sophie made a strangled sound behind me. Ethan stepped inside. The house seemed smaller with him in it. He stood in the front room with his shoulders pulled back, trying to make himself less imposing, and failing badly. The old clock ticked above the mantel. The yellow curtains in the kitchen glowed with afternoon light. Everything smelled like lemon oil, coffee, and the faint sweetness of dried lavender tucked somewhere in a drawer. Home. My throat tightened so quickly I had to look away. Grandma saw it anyway. She always had. She crossed the room and took my face between her hands. Her palms were dry and warm, lined from years of gardening, washing, working, holding me together when I thought grief would split me open. My baby, she murmured. That was all it took. I folded into her. For a moment I was not Luna, not mate, not mother-to-be, not some woman with a secret in her blood. I was Alma Wells, standing in my grandmother's front room with my face pressed to her shoulder, breathing in rose soap and coffee. She held me hard. Then she leaned back and looked me over from forehead to feet. Her gaze paused at my collar, where the claiming mark was hidden, then dropped to my hand on my stomach. You happy? She asked quietly. I nodded, though my eyes stung. Terrified too. That means you're paying attention. A laugh broke out of me. She kissed my cheek, then turned toward Ethan. You. Kitchen table. Ethan went still. Daniel coughed into his fist. Grace whispered, Lord, I like her. Grandma pointed. Now. Ethan obeyed. I had never loved him more. Grandma made coffee strong enough to raise the dead and set a cup in front of Ethan like she was serving judgment. He sat at the table with both hands resting on his knees, back straight, face serious. He looked enormous beside the faded flowered wallpaper. Grandma sat across from him. The rest of us pretended not to listen from various corners of the kitchen, which fooled no one. Do you love her? Grandma asked. Ethan did not blink. Yes, ma'am. Do you respect her? With everything I am? Do you understand that she is not property because some old wolf law says she belongs beside you? His jaw tightened. She belongs to herself. If she stands beside me, it is because she chooses to. My heart gave a painful little twist. Grandma studied him over the rim of her cup. Did you ask before you touched her? The room went so silent I heard the stove settle. I nearly choked on my tea. Ethan went very still,
Through the bond came a sharp flash of shame. Not defensive, not angry. Shame, remembered and accepted. He looked at my grandmother and answered in a low voice. Not once. Not the first time. I kissed her without permission. I hurt her. I have spent every day since making sure I never forget it. Grandma turned her eyes to me. I set my tea down before I spilled it. He learned. Her gaze did not soften yet. That's all? No, I looked at Ethan. He changed. And I chose him after. Not because of the bond. Not because anyone pushed me. Because I wanted him. Only then did Grandma lean back. Ethan's breath moved out of him slowly, as if he had been waiting for a blade. Grandma took another sip of coffee. If you break her heart, alpha or not, I'll skin you like a rabbit and hang you over my fireplace. Ethan nodded with perfect seriousness. Yes, ma'am. Peter, seated on the floor with a biscuit in both hands, whispered, Can she do that? Daniel said, I believe she can. Grandma's mouth twitched. Just like that, the air changed. Not easy, not simple, but open. By supper, my grandmother had become the center of a small universe. The children followed her everywhere, into the garden, around the old chicken coop, down to the shed where she gave them dull tools and safe tasks, and corrected them with the firm patience of a woman who had raised children, tomatoes, and one stubborn granddaughter. Anna asked if chickens had feelings. Isaac asked if Kentucky had monsters. Mara said almost nothing, but she stayed close to Grandma's skirt, watching her hands. Grandma noticed that too. She handed Mara a basket. You can carry green beans without talking. Mara took it. That was all. Later, I found the two of them sitting on the back step, snapping beans into a bowl. Mara's thin shoulder rested against my grandmother's arm. Neither one mentioned it. Inside, Grace and Grandma moved around the kitchen together like old churchwomen at a fundraiser, arguing over salt, praising each other's crust, and pretending they were not deeply pleased. Daniel fixed the loose hinge on the pantry door without being asked. Sophie curled up in my old reading chair and mouthed, She is terrifying, at me. I mouthed back, I warned you. Ethan stayed near enough to keep me in sight, but not so near that it felt like hovering. He helped bring in firewood. He listened when Grandma told him where to stack it. He did not argue when she told him he was doing it wrong. That was love. After supper, when the children were sticky with pie and heavy with sleep, Grandma sat in her rocking chair with Bertie tucked under one arm, Anna leaning against her knee, and Isaac asleep at her feet. She looked at me across the room and shook her head. Alma, when you promised me grandbabies, I expected you to start with one. Not come home with an alpha, a pup in your belly, and a schoolhouse full of wolf babies. Grace laughed so hard she had to sit down. I covered my face. Grandma. What? Child, I sent you to Ohio to teach children, not bring the whole class home for supper. Ethan's eyes warmed from across the room. The bond between us glowed softly. Not heat this time. Not hunger. Home. Then Grandma's smile faded just a little. She glanced toward the sleeping children before looking back at me. You and I need to talk before you leave. My stomach tightened. About the wolves? About the Wells women? The room seemed to tilt, though I remained still. Ethan stood straighter by the hearth. Grandma's voice stayed calm. Your mama knew stories. Her mama before her knew more. I thought old things had the decency to stay buried. Her eyes moved to the mark beneath my collar. Looks like old things got restless. What am I? I whispered. Grandma looked at me with all the love in the world, and not nearly enough answers. Mine, she said first. Whatever else comes after, remember that. Near midnight, the house finally quieted. Bodies were tucked onto couches, pallets, quilts, and every spare mattress Grandma owned. Daniel took the porch with one guard. Grace snored softly in the sewing room. Sophie had fallen asleep with one hand resting protectively near Bertie's blanket. I went to my old bedroom for extra sheets. Ethan followed me.
For protection? I asked softly. He closed the door behind him. For sheets. You are not carrying any sheets. I could. I turned around and found him standing in the middle of my childhood room, too broad for the narrow space, his gaze moving over the iron bed, the quilt, the shelf of old school prizes, the pressed flowers in a frame above my dresser. This was yours, he said. It still is, I suppose. His eyes came back to me. I can see you here. Something in my chest softened. Reading under the covers? Arguing with books. I did not argue with books. You argue with everything you love. I stepped closer. Careful. His mouth curved. Yes, ma'am. That should not have undone me. It did. Maybe it was the long day. Maybe it was the way he had sat at my grandmother's table and answered every hard question without hiding. Maybe it was being back in this little room with the man I loved, my whole life folding around itself like fabric. Or maybe I was simply too horny to pretend otherwise. I caught the front of his shirt and pulled him down. His mouth met mine with a low sound that made my knees forget their purpose. The kiss turned hot almost immediately, all the restraint of the day burning away in the dark. His hands went to my waist, then my back, then lower, gripping me close enough that I felt exactly how much he wanted me. His dick was hard against my hip, and there was no polite way for either of us to misunderstand it. I smiled into his mouth. He groaned. Alma, what? This room does not have a lock. That is unfortunate. It is reckless. I know. I kissed him again anyway. He backed me gently against the dresser. A hairbrush rattled. My hands slid beneath his shirt, over warm skin and hard muscle, and his fingers found the buttons at my collar with reverent impatience. We should stop, he muttered. We should. Neither of us stopped. Then a small voice from the doorway said, What are you two doing? Ethan froze. I turned my head. Peter stood in the open doorway, holding a cookie in one hand, eyes wide as saucers. Behind him, Anna appeared, then Mara, then my grandmother. For one full second, everyone stared at everyone else. Ethan cursed under his breath. Shit. Language, Grandma said mildly. I shoved my blouse down. Ethan stepped in front of me, then seemed to realize that made the situation look worse, then stepped aside again. His shirt was half untucked. My collar was crooked. There was no hiding the heat in my face, or the fact that Ethan looked like he wanted the floorboards to swallow him whole. Peter lifted the cookie. I was looking for milk. Grandma's eyes danced. Kitchen is that way, baby. Anna looked between us. Why is Alpha Ethan scared? Daniel's voice drifted faintly from the porch. Because he is wise. I pressed both hands over my mouth. Grandma gathered the children with one arm like chicks. Don't mind us. Continue with what you were doing. Grandma, she smiled sweetly. Or don't. But if you do, choose a room with a lock. Come on, babies. She pulled them away. The door stayed open. Ethan stared at it as if it had betrayed him. I lasted 3 seconds before laughter took me. He looked at me, offended and helpless. I have faced enemy alphas with less fear. You should have seen yourself. I wiped my eyes. You looked like you got caught with your dick out in Sunday school. His mouth opened, closed. Then, despite himself, he smiled. Slow, reluctant, beautiful. If that child had arrived 2 minutes later, he said, that description might have been less inaccurate. I laughed harder. He crossed to me and rested his forehead against mine. I love you. The laughter softened in my chest. I love you too. He kissed me once, carefully this time. Then he stepped back with heroic restraint. Sheets. Yes, I said, still smiling. Sheets. Later, when the house slept at last, Ethan and I stood on the porch under the Kentucky stars. The night smelled like damp grass, wood smoke, and home. His arms were around me from behind, one hand resting lightly beneath my ribs,
The other spread over my stomach with a tenderness that still made me ache. Inside, my grandmother's chair creaked once. I leaned back against Ethan's chest. I kept my promise. His chin brushed my hair. You came home. I found a good man. My fingers covered his. I'm starting a family. A large one. A ridiculous one. His quiet laugh warmed the bond. For a while, we simply breathed together. Then Ethan went completely still. Not tense, not afraid. Still in the way wolves became when the world said something human ears could not hear. I turned my head. What is it? His hand settled more firmly over my stomach. Through the bond came wonder so sharp it stole my breath. Alma, he whispered. I hear 2 heartbeats. From inside the house, without even opening her eyes, Grandma called, Twins, then. Lord help us all.
you close and feel the light. Even though the world won't understand, I'll keep you safe, I'll take your hand. In the silence, we'll defy